Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. And we begin our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Least, would you join us at the microphone and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. May I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Duran.
Here.
Councilmember Heilman.
Here.
Councilmember Meister.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Horvath.
Here.
Mayor D'Amico.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And may I have a report on the closed session agenda?
Yes, the closed session meeting was convened at 6 p.m. this evening. There were 3 members of the public who came to speak during public comment. The City Council added 2 items to the agenda on Government Code Section 54954.2, which include an initiation of litigation under Government Code Section 54956.9D4, number of potential cases 1, and a second item of pending litigation under Government Code 54956.9D1. And those cases are City of West Hollywood versus BPREP Sunset LLC, which is pending in Los Angeles County Superior Court, case number 18STCV03479, second case BPREP Sunset LLC and Corman Communities versus City of West Hollywood, Los Angeles Superior Court, case number BS 175183. The council discussed the 3 matters that were listed and took no reportable actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to go on to the approval of the agenda. And for those people here for item 3B, which is about our potential ordinance regarding rental terms of 1 year or longer, that item will be tabled indefinitely. You can speak during public comment if you wish, but we will not be discussing that item this evening. Are there any changes from the staff?
Yes, staff is also requesting that item 6A be tabled to a future meeting.
Okay.
And there is a memo on the dais for all of the council regarding item 2V as in Victor. There was an updated recommendation to add an additional hour to the event, which will add an additional amount for the fees that are being requested to be waived. So when we get to the approval of the consent calendar, take that into consideration that the recommendation has changed.
Will do. Thank you very much. Any changes from my colleagues?
Mayor, I was going to propose that we move items, I'll try, 5A, 5B, 5C, 5D, 5F, and 6B to consent.
5A is about wayfinding. 5B is about a gift to the city of the collar and leash sign. 5C is a resolution adopting the program planning summary for the community development block grant funds. And you said 5E?
5D.
5D is an agreement for services with the LA Metro, continuation of the annual Metro transit passes.
5F.
And 5F, which is a discussion of city council meeting schedule.
And 6B.
And 6B, which is a legislative item regarding amending the sunset clause of the West Hollywood Municipal Code to extend the home sharing business license program for an additional 2 years. Any objections? I wish to discuss 5A, or I can just vote against it, depending on...
I was planning on voting no on 5A too, so why don't we
Okay.
have some discussion on 5A?
All right. So other than that, we'll move all those other items to the consent calendar. That's B, C, D,
F.
E,
F.
F,
C, D, F, and 6B.
not E.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. With that,
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
it's been moved and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda passes. Thank you very much, colleagues. Now we will turn to adjournment motions, and I was going to ask Captain Ramirez to come forward. Oh, there you are. Usually you're in the back over there. I was looking for you there. To come forward and take the microphone. Thank you.
Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and other city officials. Thank you for honoring West Hollywood Station, honoring and remembering West Hollywood Station Detective Amber Joy Lease. As you could very well imagine, our station is absolutely shaken to its core. Amber was a very proud member of the West Hollywood Sheriff Station. Most of you may know her or may remember her. She was a member of my cops team for many, many years. Very involved with the community and a fixture at City Hall on various occasions. I have received many calls from our community members and hotel general managers and business owners who personally knew Amber, and they wanted to offer me their condolences and express their grief over her passing. What I can tell you about Amber was an absolute gem. She was wholesome, caring, charismatic, sympathetic, and empathetic. She had this uncanny ability to connect with folks. When she entered a room, everybody knew that Amber was in that room. That was her personality, and a smile to go along with it. Her personality was evident in the number of accolades that she received, both from community members and from department members alike. Her file is full of commendations for exactly that. Amber loved dancing, singing, laughing, and boy, everybody knows Amber loved a good joke. She loved the city of West Hollywood and thoroughly enjoyed serving our community. And when I say thoroughly enjoyed serving our community, she really did. Most importantly, she loved her family, and she loved her family dearly. Amber and I had countless conversations about her family, and prior to me meeting them, I already knew them. So I want to say Ray Ray, DB, Daniel, Alan, Heather, Summery, and Savannah. Thank you for sharing her with us. In closing, West Hollywood resident Marv Arbach summed it up best. When he had not seen Amber in the field for a long period of time, Marv called me and he said, "Ramirez, what haven't I seen least?" I said, "Well, Marv, Amber is promoted to detective." His response was, "Well, you need a dozen more like her." Mr. Arbach, you're absolutely right. Her presence will certainly be missed. To the city of West Hollywood, thank you very much for honoring and remembering our girl.
Captain, one question. There's an event at the sheriff's station, isn't there, raising money to help cover the expenses
Yes.
of her services? When is that and what time?
Yeah, there's going to be Tuesday, January 28th, and that's going to be during the lunch hour from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock. We'll be setting up in the front of West Hollywood Station, and the donation it's a $10 donation, and that's for an In-N-Out burger truck. We'll have a burger, a drink, and chips, I believe. And there'll be music, and Amber loved her music, so we'll have a DJ, we'll have a photographer, and we're gonna have a lot of fun in her honor. So I'm hoping everybody can attend.
Thank you very much, Captain. And to the family, our entire community misses and wishes you the best, sends you all of our love. We have we adjourn meetings in honor of members of our community who have died, and we will certainly do that in Detective Amber Least's memory as well. So thank you for coming and letting her spend her life, her day life here in our community, helping us to be a better place to live and work, play. Thank you very much. Are there any other adjournment this evening?
Yes, Mayor, I also have an additional adjournment request. I'd request that we adjourn in memory of Brandon Chase. Brandon was born in the Bronx on March 17th, 1929. For his first job, he went, from his first radio job, he went on to be a TV anchorman. He owned an advertising agency. He produced and distributed feature films. He started a watch company. Brandon loved his family and friends above all else. He was an avid reader, had a great sense of humor, and was a man of integrity. He lived in the city of West Hollywood for many years and then later moved up into the hills, but His daughter, Libby Chase, and her son have lived in West Hollywood for many years, and on behalf of the council, we would like to adjourn in his memory, and Libby is with us tonight. We're so sorry for your loss. So without objection, we'll adjourn in his memory.
Of course. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to echo your condolences, of course, for Detective Least. It's a tremendous loss for our community. I'd also like to adjourn in memory of Madeline Jane Cowan, the mother of Lindsay Deaton, who's a member of our Transgender Advisory Board, has been involved with our production of the Vagina Monologues in the city, and is currently working on a new production. I know it's been a terrible loss for Lindsay, and we extend our condolences to Lindsay and her family. I'd also like to adjourn in memory of Gloria Taylor, who was a property owner and landlord in the city of West Hollywood, mother of Amanda Goodwin, who's been very involved in our community. We extend our condolences to Amanda and her family. I'd like to adjourn in memory of Burton Sunken, who's the father of Howard Sunken, who died suddenly from complications related to a surgery. It's been a difficult time for their family, and Howard's been very involved in our community, and we extend our condolences to their entire family as well. I'd like to adjourn in memory of Thomas Warner, the father of former West Hollywood employee Tiara Warner, who passed away recently. And finally, as is our tradition in the city of West Hollywood, to adjourn in memory of those who were killed in service to their country since our last meeting. Private First Class Miguel Villalon, age 21. Staff Sergeant Ian P. McLaughlin, age 29. Specialist Henry Mayfield Jr., age 23. Sergeant First Class Michael J. Goebel, age 33. And since our last meeting, there was unfortunately another tragic mass shooting on the morning of December 10th, 2019, which took place at a kosher supermarket in Jersey City, New Jersey. Officials later declared the anti-Semitic incident an act of domestic terrorism. The victims were Mindel Ferenc, age 33, Moshe Deutsch, age 24, Miguel Douglas Rodriguez, age 49, and Detective Joe Seals, age 40. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Meister, do you have any? No. Councilmember Duran?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I do have three this week. First person I'd like to ask us to adjourn in memory of is Maureen Costa. Maureen was actually one of my first legal secretaries back in the 1980s. She was a straight ally to a lot of gay men who were suffering with HIV, and she did numerous bedside wills for people who were dying of HIV and AIDS in the 1980s. She moved into West Hollywood and was the head of the alto section in the West Hollywood Chorale when it was started back in 1995. And for many years, she sang with the West Hollywood Chorale. She, when I was first installed as mayor in 2005, she actually sang for the community, and we were all in the auditorium next door. Sadly, she died of diabetes, survived by her sister. The other is my friend Silvio Horta. Silvio created a television show called Ugly Betty. America Ferraro actually won the Emmy for Ugly Betty, and that was his creation. And he called West Hollywood and the recovery community home for many years. Sadly, he passed away in Florida last week, and still leaves many dear friends here in the city of West Hollywood. And finally, yesterday, Chris Jacobs, who was a member of the Keller Williams team here in West Hollywood, passed away, and I know that many people across the city of West Hollywood knew Chris and his laughter and the brightness that he brought wherever he went. Tragically, all three of these individuals were part of the fabric of the city and our community, and will be dearly missed. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I have none except to say that's a lot of loss, and we're a resilient place, and sometimes that kind of sadness is just best to sit with. But certainly from all corners of our city, these things are coming, and it's a lot. Now we'll move to the presentations portion of our evening. And I think Hernan, are you, yes. So why don't you come and conduct us like a conductor, because we want to get it right. And this is, we're coming to the moment when the census is about to begin, and it's of critical importance to all of us. And so I want you to make sure that we do what we're supposed to do.
All right, so thank you very much, Mayor, for allowing us to go ahead and kick off this campaign. If you recall, last year you directed staff of the City of West Hollywood to do everything possible to ensure that the city has participation in the census and that everybody is counted, because an accurate count, as you know, is very important for two very important reasons. There are more than $600 billion that the federal government will be distributing, and also apportionment. California could lose a congressional seat. Today we have 53 seats in Congress. We could lose one. We don't want to lose one. We know that democratic representation is very important, and that's why we have assembled a complete count committee and developed a strategy. Part of the strategy is to have a social media presence. We have partnered with the City of LA and the County of Los Angeles, which are conducted a regional campaign along with the representatives from the state and obviously of the Census Bureau in the United States. Thus, tonight, what we are asking you is to join the members of the Complete Count Committee to kick off the campaign, to invite everybody who's watching us at home and every resident in the city to become an ambassador, to represent this initiative, to learn the facts, and then help us spread the word, because what we need to do is to be counted. The campaign is Be Counted West Hollywood. So I would like to ask, I prepared some notes. I know that all of you have read them, and then we could invite perhaps the members of the Complete Count Committee here who would like to say a few words and then take a group picture with these fabulous signs that we got for this occasion. So thank you very much.
Let's do it. I will begin. This evening, we officially launch the City of West Hollywood's Census 2020 campaign. Today's event is one milestone, and I want to recognize the members of the city's Complete Count Committee, the CCC, for their commitment to developing strategies to ensuring that every resident in West Hollywood learns about the importance of the census and the need to be counted. If you didn't know, the federal government will use population count from the Census 2020 to distribute about $675 billion. An inaccurate count hurts cities, counties, and states, just like ours. That's why it's important that you get to know the facts and become involved. City staff, along with members of the Complete Count Committee, will conduct an orientation on Tuesday, January 28th at 5:30 p.m. That's Tuesday, January 28th at 5:30 p.m. on a go-to meeting. That means you can do it in your pajamas from your home if you happen to be in pajamas at 5:30 on a Tuesday. For more information, please visit weho.org/census2020 or contact Hernan Molina at hmolina@weho.org. Who would like to go next? Okay.
How much money is at stake? The census data will be used to distribute $675 billion in federal resources. These are dollars for education, Head Start, food and nutrition programs, public health services, including funding for Medi-Cal. Funds are distributed to every state based on population counts. If you don't answer the census invitation, then you are not counted. An inaccurate count will shortchange our state from much-needed financial support, and by extension, it will also impact West Hollywood. We can't allow that to happen. Let's get counted.
Now you all see what having him as a deputy for 12 years was about. He has organized us. Do you want to be part of the city's initiative? Become an ambassador. As the mayor mentioned, a complete count is of utmost importance. You can help out by joining the city's initiative as a city census ambassador. On Tuesday, January 28th at 5:30 p.m., city staff will conduct the first online orientation. For more information, visit the city's website, www.weho.org/census2020.
Thank you.
Census data will also be used to apportion congressional seats. The House of Representatives has 435 seats. Currently, California has 53 seats and is the largest congressional delegation in the nation. That could change due to slower population growth, but also due to an accurate count. Congressional seats are apportioned based on population counts. An undercount will hurt California, no matter with which party you are registered. Our progressive state is and has been a bellwether and has set course for adoption of progressive policies in the United States. We cannot afford to lose a seat in Congress. Let's get counted.
So some of you may have heard about the Trump administration's efforts to put a citizenship question on the census. I want to reassure everyone that the courts have rejected the administration's efforts, and there is no citizenship question included in the census. It is also important for everyone to understand that the information that the census collects is kept confidential, and no personal information whatsoever can be divulged to any other agency, including other federal governmental agencies. Whether you're an American citizen, or whether you're an immigrant, or whether you're an undocumented immigrant in the city, please know that it is important for you to participate and be counted.
Thank you very much. Would members of the Complete Count Committee wish to speak? I think there's a couple here who... Yes.
We'll all come up and take a group picture.
Are they going to speak first? There we go.
So good evening, everybody. Can you hear me all right? My name is Clifford Roberts. I'm a licensed mental health professional. I am with Step Up on Second, a program manager, and I'm a resident of the city of West Hollywood and a member of the Complete Count Committee. As residents of the city, we can call on each and every one of you watching this meeting at home or present in this room to join us in this effort to get everyone counted. You can join us by becoming a City Census 2020 ambassador. It's easy. The commitment is small, and it's the right thing to do. If you are interested, please send an email to census2020@weho.org. I will be counted.
Hi, my name is Marka Gay, and I spend many of my waking hours in West Hollywood as the Executive Director of Congregation Kolami, and I'm a member of the Complete Count Committee. Starting on or about March 13th, 2020, residents will start receiving a postcard invitation from the Census Bureau. This postcard will provide you with information on how to fill out the census questionnaire. Once you follow through, that's all you have to do. No need to fill in paper questionnaire. If you don't, you will eventually hear a knock on your door from a census enumerator.
Hi, I'm Karen Ayers, 17-year resident of the city of West Hollywood and a member of the Census Count Committee. I call on all of you influencers and regular folks like me to use the power of our social media accounts to share information on the city's Census 2020 initiative. We all check our Facebook and Instagram accounts several times a day. You read my post and I read yours. Why not share a post or two about the importance of getting everybody counted? I know I will be counted. Will you? For more information, please visit weho.org/census2020 or contact Hernan Molina at hmolina@weho.org. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Jeremy Payne. I'm a program manager with the Quality California Institute. Quality California is the nation's largest statewide LGBTQ civil rights advocacy organization, and we are working diligently to make sure everyone, especially the LGBTQ community, will be counted. Census Day is right around the corner, and with so much at stake, the redrawn district lines, over 300 federal programs, and nearly $900 billion, according to the latest count, of federal funds that could impact LGBTQ families. We are making sure that we do everything we can to get LGBTQ families counted in California and in the city of West Hollywood. We'll be working alongside the West Hollywood count to make sure that everyone here is counted. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Ruth Williams, and I represent the Public Safety Commission, and I'm a proud member of the Census Committee as well. And for me, I think everybody has really said what needs to be said, but it's so important, so critical that we reach out to family, to friends, to our neighbors. We have to let people know that they can't be afraid to be counted in the census. And that's one of the most important things, that we do have a large immigrant population. And regardless of whether or not, you know, you're Russian or Hispanic, please, it's so important to our city and to our state, but most important for people to overcome the fear of census, and the confidentiality needs to be stressed to people. So thank you for your support.
So, Steve Martin, East Side. Ruth and I, between the two of us, probably have a little over a century of residency in West Hollywood. Probably a little bit more on her side.
I'll get into that.
Anyway, you know, there's a lot of people in Washington that want to make sure that our diverse community is not counted. And that's the challenge. I mean, make sure you, your friends, everyone you know, citizen, non-citizen alike, because it's really an act of resistance. Because if we lose a congressional seat, that means Texas gains one. So we really need to hang together and get people enthused about this count. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk.
Thank you. So now we're all going to get up and we're going to take a quick picture with some of those signs and then fill out your census forms.
Do you have a presentation for them?
That's a census guy for you. Thank you very much.
No. All right, I believe there are some additional presentations to the 19th Amendment commemoration. Is that yours?
I believe we have members of the Women's Advisory Board here today. We, as a council, decided that at each council meeting, each month, we wanted to commemorate the 100-year anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment. And this month, the Women's Advisory Board will be helping us with that, sharing a little bit about the 19th Amendment and its importance to the community. Are we doing a picture before you all speak? Because that's what's happening? All right. If it's not on social media, it didn't happen. I got it. Okay, let's do the picture and then we'll hear from our Women's Advisory Board.
Okay, boy, I don't think we have a proclamation. No, there we go.
We narrowly escaped the photo. Excellent.
Yes.
I thought we got the photo. Can we do the photo after? Okay, perfect. Good evening, council members. My name is Jenner Deal, and I am vice chair of the Women's Advisory Board for the city. Tonight is the first of monthly presentations at the city council meetings to celebrate and commemorate the centennial of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution that granted women the right to vote. These presentations will focus on the history of the suffrage movement and the enduring significance of the 19th Amendment in our current struggle for total equality. The 19th Amendment to the Constitution prohibited government from denying the right to vote to citizens of the United States on the basis of sex. It was the culmination of a decades-long movement for women's suffrage at both state and national levels. Initially introduced to Congress in 1878, it took 42 years to win the fight. 42 years. However, the initial quest for women's rights to vote in the United States dates back to 1848 at the historic Seneca Falls Convention, held July 19th and 20th, 1848 in Seneca Falls, New York. The convention was the first women's rights convention. It advertised itself as a convention to discuss the social, civil, and religious condition and rights of women. Elizabeth Stanton and Lucretia Mott organized the convention, and the first aimed at obtaining equal rights for women. About 300 people attended, and a declaration of sentiments was issued. Among those sentiments was voting rights for women. The convention's declaration of sentiments became the single most important factor in spreading news of the women's rights movement around the country in 1848 and into the future. By the time the National Women's Rights Convention of 1851, the issue of women's rights to vote had become a central tenet of the United States women's rights movement. It actually took 30 years of the women's rights movement before women's voting rights were introduced to Congress in 1878. So in total, it was 72 years to pass the 19th Amendment. But the fight did not stop there. It was 45 years later that women of color were able to vote under the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So really, 117 years to secure voting rights for all women in the United States. And yes, we can vote, but we still are not equal. 3 years after passing the 19th Amendment, the Equal Rights Amendment was introduced in 1923, which formally writes women into the Constitution, and as of just last Wednesday, was ratified in Virginia for the very first time. But now the legal battle ensues in Congress and onto the Senate, and 100 years later, the word woman is still not in the United States Constitution. It's been 172 years since we began the fight for women's equal rights, and we are still fighting, celebrating wins along the way, and then getting back to work. With each generation, new activists are born and begin to challenge the status quo, a through line from generation to generation, from the 1800s to now, resounding the same desire: equality, equity, visibility, and a voice. And just this past weekend, we celebrated the 4-year anniversary of the Women's March, a battle cry for a generation that has had enough. Circumstances change, we get stronger with each progression, and we will not give up. We owe it to our history, to our sisters, and to our allies to keep fighting. So in honor of the centennial, I want to thank you and community members. Thank you for your support and for continuously creating a space that honors women, not only for who we are, but where we've been and where we plan to be. There will be national, statewide, and local celebrations of the 19th Amendment across the country. Everyone can be involved with honoring the past and protecting the precious right to vote. Everyone can have a voice. Thank you for having us here tonight. It's a big year. We have a lot to face this year, and 2020 will undoubtedly be history-making. On the Women's Advisory Board, we take a micro approach to our work. We challenge ourselves to stay focused on progress and the future. We celebrate our small victories with as much excitement as our major wins. But this year, in 2020, we have a huge celebration at hand, the 100th year anniversary of the 19th Amendment being written into law. So we look forward to building up to August 26, 2020. Thank you.
All right, we have two more presentations. The next one is Councilmember Meister.
Thank you. So January is National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. Human trafficking is a form of slavery that can happen to anyone, regardless of race, age, or gender, and is a highly profitable crime. Human trafficking is a crime that involves the exploitation of a person for the purpose of compelled labor or a commercial sex act through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. The City of West Hollywood has supported efforts to combat human trafficking through legislation, expert-led trainings, and community awareness activities. On Wednesday, January 29, 2020, the City of West Hollywood, through its Human Rights Speaker Series, will host a free community screening of the film Anona and panel discussion with the filmmakers Kate Bosworth and Michael Polish, human trafficking survivor leaders Ima Mattel and Dawn Schiller, and moderated by Women's Advisory Board member Amanda Bleich. Tonight, we would also like to specifically recognize Dawn Schiller for her dedicated leadership and advocacy on behalf of human trafficking survivors and her tireless commitment to ending human trafficking. For over 15 years, Dawn Schiller has been a survivor leader in the anti-trafficking, domestic violence, and sexual assault movements, courageously sharing her story of abuse, trafficking, and survival in her presentations and trainings to inspire, educate, and motivate communities across the United States. She gives academic presentations and trainings that dynamically infuse personal, lived experience and cover topics of anti-violence, anti-trafficking, teen and child abuse, the media, allyship, trauma-informed care, resilience, and healing. Dawn Schiller has been both a guest speaker and expert trainer at City West Hollywood events, and we thank her for contributing her knowledge and expertise. Dawn, if you would please come up. Amanda as well, thank you.
Go ahead. Shall we?
We're going to just take a
Yes.
Photo
John?
first.
Good evening, everyone. Councilmember Meister, thank you so much for your continued support in this area of human trafficking. And as she mentioned, this is the National National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. So I'm really glad that the city is taking the time to honor this, to honor my dear friend Dawn, who was actually trafficked within our community many years ago. So I can only imagine how difficult it must be to stand here with us. So I thank you for your courage, for your resilience, for everything that you do, for the book that you've written. You've served as such an inspiration to me, and I just feel so encouraged to continue to do my work. Whenever I feel that there are obstacles, I look to you and know that we can make a difference together. So thank you for inspiring me and inspiring so many.
Hello, and thank you. I would like to say that it's so monumental for me, as Amanda said, that I was trafficked on these streets many years ago, to be able to come and educate this community in particular on ways to not let that happen to anybody else who was like me or who is like me. It's a great way to acknowledge the work that we've done and to acknowledge survivors and survivors' voices in this field. And thank you for allowing me the space. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. And finally, we have a proclamation from the city to our good friend Ed Paluzzi. Ed, are you still here? There he is. Fantastic. So Ed recently announced his retirement, and we would like to take this opportunity to recognize him for his amazing service to the city. Go-Getters, the city has contracted with Go-Getters for 25 years, and they are our courier service. So if you need anything taken somewhere, Ed is no longer your guy. You need to call Postmates or some online service. But really, Ed, we very much appreciate your 25 years of service. We have a proclamation. I'm going to run down and take a quick picture with you. Okay, and now we will move to public comment.
Mayor?
Yes.
We have one more adjournment.
Oh, you want to do that now? Absolutely.
Yes, can we do
okay.
that?
Absolutely.
So
Please.
I'm sorry, I forgot this one earlier. Francisca Gallen. Francisca was the beloved grandmother-in-law of Lorena Ciano. Lorena is the city's director of finance. Francisca was born in 1920, and she passed away recently at the age of 99. So I would request what we adjourn in her memory.
Without objection, of course. Now we will have public comment. The council values your comments. However, pursuant to the Brown Act, we cannot take action on items that are not listed on our posted agenda. The public comment period is limited to 20 minutes. We're going to give each speaker 2 minutes each. And our first three speakers are Alexis Sanchez, Steve Martin, and Maria Roman. Ms. Sanchez.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council, City staff. My name is Alexis Sanchez. I'm here representing the Safe West Hollywood Community Coalition and speaking on item 2U, which is the ChemSex Town Hall Forum. The Safe West Hollywood Community Coalition, we look at, we're a grassroots coalition that's looking at substance abuse issues. The two that we've identified presenting the most harms in West Hollywood are methamphetamine use and binge drinking, and we've created an action plan of a variety of initiatives to start to look at this. We are working with the county to develop a meth report card, so that's going to be looking at meth statistics just across the county, and recently wrote a legislative proposal to do the same at the state level, so that's very, very exciting. But then one of the things we wanted to do was create a meth town hall where people can share their experiences. We can hear from the community what meth use looks like. Our first, I hope that this event is the beginning of a larger conversation. We're focused mostly on chemsex, which in terms of community scans, that was what we were seeing. That was what was coming up again and again when we were talking to community members, when we were talking to people in treatment, recovery, and in prevention. So we wanted to start the conversation, but I know from community engagement that meth cuts across, it cuts across class, income levels, race, gender identity. It's an issue through and through. So I hope that this is the beginning of a bigger conversation where we can really start to talk about why meth is still so prevalent in West Hollywood, in Los Angeles County, and in the country as a whole. So yeah, this event is going to be, I have the flyer in front of me, but I can't. Wednesday, February 12th, so the Wednesday right before Valentine's Day, 7 p.m. right here in Council Chambers. I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Steve Martin, to be followed by Maria Roman.
Thank you, Steve Martin. And it was exciting to start the new year with the Virginia legislature passing the Equal Rights Amendment. And I'm just hoping that we can all be around at a time that we can edit Thomas Jefferson so that we can see that we hold these truths self-evident that all people were created equal, because that's where we really need to be. So I want to thank Councilmember Duran for item 2U, the Chem Forum. You know, I mean, we've seen so much in the last 2 years that it's timely. Of course, it's always timely. I know we worked with Friends Community Center back in the 90s when the city did its pioneering first outreaches on methamphetamine abuse that were first in the nation. But it's really time to talk about these issues and talk about them in a way that people feel safe, non-judgmental, and have these adult conversations. Because very often these conversations are more like finger wagging, and they don't really need to be. And if we're looking to help our community, they can't be. So I just want to say that I really appreciate it and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Maria Roman, followed by Victor Omolchenko.
Hi, good night. I am here just to basically say thank you. Our funding was increased to provide capacity building for our organization. I am lucky to be the Vice President and Chief Operations Officer for the Trans Latino Coalition, one of the few organizations that is providing key services for the trans community and who is led by trans people themselves. So we look forward to ongoing work with the city. As of now, we've already submitted our report for the last 3 months, so we're doing amazing stuff within the city. I want to invite each one of you to come see our site. We are not within the city, however, we are providing critical service to folks who are homeless and dealing with a multitude of issues within the city. So I hope that if you have the time, you can come and visit us. Yeah, that's all. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roman. Victor Omolchenko to be followed by Marv Auerbach. And as Victor is coming up, I just want to remind folks, I see that there are several people here to speak on item 3B, and that item has been tabled to a time indefinitely. You're welcome to speak on that item, but it will unlikely come back in this, well, it may come back different than the way it was presented this evening. Your input may be helpful. Please.
Thank you, Mayor. Victor Omolchenko, longtime West Hollywood resident, here to thank you for all the efforts that the community has put in and the financial resources that you, the City Council, have approved related to item 2K, which is the update on potential changes for the West Hollywood West neighborhood overlay zone and design guidelines. I remember when the term overlay zone on the zoning maps used to be called a conservation zone, and there are other zones also of such impact in the city as the Norma Triangle, which has also developed guidelines, and I'm sure you'll be following up on that as the years go on. But I just wanted to alert you that there are some other neighborhoods that were conservation zones, and that I know I'm hearing some buzz in the neighborhoods of Poinsettia Greenacre, as well as in Laurel Park, which is that neighborhood south of Santa Monica Boulevard between Sweetser and Havenhurst, as neighborhoods that are possibly looking looking into these new design guidelines to be able to preserve their neighborhood stability. The other item is, I really appreciate seeing item 2X, the legislative priority. We really do need to get a handle on the whole housing situation. We were hearing all the time, housing, 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 and this legislative priority would regard regulation of short-term rentals in California. I really think that we do need to get a handle on how many short-term rentals have been registered with the city and how many unregistered rentals are still listed on the various hosting platforms. You know, it's a matter of it's a matter of public safety, it's a matter of neighborhood stability, and it's a matter of tax receipts, because a little bit of money can come into the city. And I would like to say that I do support tabled item 3B. Yes, let's implement at some point a 1-year minimum lease for apartment buildings throughout the city of West Hollywood. Thank you.
Thank you. Marv Auerbach, followed by John Linger.
Good evening, City Council. I also want to give my condolences for Detective Elise, to her family, and to the Sheriff's Department. Recently, I got a notice, I live on Alfred, about the Zen Healing. Next Monday is going to be I guess the licensing about them. I got a little more information from Dan Mick this morning. What I'm concerned about is the lack of security. I know the new marijuana facilities have been under stricter guidelines as far as security. I have complained to the City Council and to code enforcement. Whatever you do, or the business license, I'd like to see more security, particularly on Santa Monica Boulevard. The Zen Healing is at 8462-70, also on the parking lot. I've talked to the owner of the property, Joe Mogul, and to Eric. I see people parking on their lot and going through the alley towards La Cienega and going to the Exhale on Romaine, which has changed names, which is the city of Los Angeles. In my opinion, where I particularly live at 1011 North Alfred and at 1020 North Alfred, there's too many medical marijuana facilities or recreational. You've inundated the area. There's not enough security. I know the new one at the corner of Alfred and Santa Monica, from what I understand, is going to have more security. But I think the Zen Healing, whatever the City Council decides and the business license, provide more security in the alley and on Santa Monica Boulevard. The other thing is, I was going to bring about some traffic suggestions that I wanted to make. I will call Beth and refer to her to present it to the City Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Auerbach. John Lingner, to be followed by Ann Goldman.
Hello, I'm a resident of West Hollywood. I've been dealing with secondhand smoke coming into my apartment from neighbors on both sides of me. I suffer from chronic bronchitis, sinusitis, and multiple allergies, including cigarette smoke. I requested a reasonable accommodation from management with a note from my doctor. My doctor stated for medical reasons, it is imperative that arrangements are put into place to protect my patient from further exposure. As of this date, my request is not being addressed properly. Many of the tenants in my building have pre-existing medical conditions. No one should be exposed to secondhand smoke. My sister and only sibling died from lung cancer at 44 years of age. My sister never smoked. She was exposed to secondhand smoke. My building should have a smoking ban for all tenants and management. I feel very stressed about this, and I'm not feeling well because of the issue. I would appreciate your advice and what can be done to correct this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Lingner. Ann Goldman, to be followed by Elvis Salmanovic.
Good evening, everybody, Mayor, John D'Amico, and council people and staff. I'm back because I have been experiencing what John has experienced, as you know, for 2.5 years now. And I beseech you, The last time I spoke, there was a report that was going to be prepared and presented by staff to give us opportunities to put some legal means with teeth in place for those of us who are disabled due to secondhand smoke. We're talking about, and just to remind you, arsenic, formaldehyde, and hydrogen cyanide in every secondhand smoke puff we smell. 2 weeks ago, I ended up, a week ago Saturday, in the emergency room with what they thought was a heart attack. I had been breathing secondhand smoke nonstop that week, tobacco, pot, and fumes, and it has to stop. I'm in rent-controlled. It's a non-smoking building. You've heard my story before. There are no teeth in the laws, and I'm begging you to put teeth in the laws to protect my health. 68% of us in WeHo want laws protecting those of us in multiple unit buildings. And I understand your reservations for independent freedom, but it's a two-way sword. So please, at the next meeting, would you present that? I thank you for your support, and it's really a matter of life and death on a much broader scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Goldman. Elvis Slomanovic, to be followed by Noeme Torres.
Good evening, thank you. This is my first time. I came here to write a paper for my college at Santa Monica, thank you, but in public policy. Having said that, I also went to the Career Center and asked if they can help me with my resumes. As we all know, it's very hard to find jobs sometimes, but I didn't know I lived on different side on Fountain, and so they couldn't help me. And I thought this policy should be challenged to all LGBTQ members, not just to West Hollywood residents, because I do come here every day and spend my money, and I've been supporting LGBTQ for 20 years in different areas. So that's my concern, for that Career Center to accept all, not just West Hollywood residents. And I also would like to say thank you to John Duran for all his help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Noeme Torres, to be followed by John Erickson.
Good evening, City Council. Just wanted to thank you as a Public Facilities Commissioner for the approval of the community events that were going to be happening for Hart Park. It is a great opportunity for everyone in the community to share their ideas, because we're going to be improving and we need to know what is needed from the community. There will be 3 pop-up events, one on Saturday, February 1st, which will be at Hart Park. There's one on February 5th, which is at West Hollywood Park. And on Monday, February 10th, will be at Plummer Park, following some presentations and Q&A about the events and what we have come and brought from the community. I also saw our fellow director of Project Angel Food, and I wanted to support 2S, which I oversaw, but I hope that you're able to support that as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. John Erickson, to be followed by Joseph Isagualan.
Hello, Mayor and Council members. First, I want to say thank you to everyone that came out to yesterday's MLK Day of Service event in West Hollywood to help beautify West Hollywood Elementary. This event has been going on for 10 plus years now. I'm really proud to have been there, I think, at almost every one, and not just because Larissa would find me if I wasn't and make sure I attended, but it was my favorite event when I worked at the city, and to see the parents, the kids, the governor's office showed up at the end. It was a really great event, and the school looks amazing, so I'm really excited. It was a wonderful time. I also am so sad Ed retired, because when I started as an intern at the city of West Hollywood, I remember calling him frantically at 5 p.m. saying, I need you to get the Women's Advisory Board commission packets out ASAP. And he would walk over, take them, no matter what time it was. And he was a true treasure to our little community. And I just realized he retired because when someone was delivering my planning commission packet, they kept calling me and I had no idea who they were. And I'm like, Ed knows how to get into my building. Why are you calling me? And so it just became this big thing. And then David Gillig said Ed retired, and I think I dropped my phone. So that was that. So thank him for his service. And then also, I'm really happy to report that I was able to work with Sheila Kuehl, our county supervisor, and I know she sent a letter to you all, the city manager of Beverly Hills, on the log cabin. I reached out several weeks ago when this issue came up and asked if the county would jump in and intervene on making sure that we could save the log cabin and make sure that we preserve the memories, the stories, and the history that was there. So I have a copy of that letter if anyone wants to see it. I know you all got it, and I think it's a really important cultural resource that we need to make sure is saved. And I'm really glad I was able to make sure Sheila Kuehl and all of her amazing staff were able to get out there and make sure their voices were heard in this conversation as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Joseph Isaguilian, to be followed by Richard Ayub.
Good evening, Mayor. Recently, I got a parking ticket. I received the notice that I got a parking ticket, but I never received the ticket on my car. And I've been trying to get the copy of that parking ticket for a month. I'm not able to. Everybody tells me, go here, go there, go, we call you. And then they send me over here. They told me to tell you how to get the copy of the parking ticket. I received the notice, but I never received the ticket on a car. So I just want, know what to do about it.
Is Jackie, I'm going to call your name. She's waving her hand back there. She will help you, and if not, come back in 2 weeks, and we will know that she didn't help you.
Okay.
Well, is that helpful? Is that a good enough start? All right, Jackie is right back there. She will, thank you. Richard Ayub, to be followed by Kevin Burton.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. I'm Richard Ayub, Executive Director of Project Angel Food. We are celebrating our 30th anniversary this year, and from day one, the city of West Hollywood has supported us. So I am here to say thank you for that. You may not know it, but you have donated more than $780,000 to people served by Project Angel Food. So thank you. That's pretty amazing. And I'm also here to ask you to support 2S, the award of agency development grants. Our portion of it will help us with our client services and nutritious services database, which is in need of repair. It's 18 years old, and we know with technology, 18 years might as well be 100 years. And I want to tell you one story about one client in West Hollywood. She's 32 years old. She just turned that last week. She's HIV positive, and she's transgender, African-American woman. She came to us on Valentine's Day last year. And because of the city of West Hollywood, we don't only provide her with 1 entree a day or 2 entrees, we provide her with all 3 meals a day. And that has reduced and eliminated her food insecurity and has improved her quality of life. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Richard. Kevin Burton, to be followed by Tobias Madigan.
Good evening, Council. I just wanted to thank the city as a bicyclist for having recently installed what are called sharrows on the pavement and a bike route signage on many residential streets throughout the city. These are recommendations of the 2017 Bicycle and Pedestrian Mobility Plan. And they are called neighborhood greenways in that plan. And so I'm sure I speak for many bicyclists in saying how pleased we are that these indicators are on the streets communicating to drivers that bicyclists are using these neighborhood greenways, and that this represents an important step in implementing that plan. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. Tobias Madigan and Lynn, et cetera, is after him.
Thank you. 2 minutes is tough to squeeze everything in when you came planned to talk about something that got tabled. First, I'll just say really quick about that. We brought 7 people here tonight that were really supportive of a 3B, and a lot of people are really disappointed. It's so hard to get community members out, and to have something tabled at last minute was really frustrating and discouraging. I don't know why, but I wanted to let you guys know that. I really try to get all of our members active in the democratic process, and it's hard when things like that happen. What I want to say in support of 3B, it's 2 really important issues. One is rent control, and one is safety. The rent control issue is gone. If you are allowed to have take a rent-stabilized building and rent it out for 1 month, it's going to be done as a corporate lease, and it's going to be done to people that stay for a month. They don't even know about rent control. They don't care about rent control. They're here for a month. Our building now has 5. Rent control is gone in our building for those 5 units. Every time someone moves out, it's going to happen again. It's happening all down the street. So you can't continue to have rent control if you're going to allow people to stay for 1 month. It's just not, in practicality, that's not going to work. The other issue that I've noticed myself and other members of our Tenants and Neighbors Association have noticed is safety issues. I can't even get into everything in the 1 minute, but I'll give you some highlights. In the last year that we've had about 4 1-month-long, supposedly, Airbnbs in our building, we've had the police called more times than I've had in 15 years. We've had police called twice for domestic violence. We had a woman who was throwing her child against the wall at night. We had a woman who was selling prescription drugs noticeably out of the place because, you know why? They're not checked, there's no background check, and there's no credit check for these people because it's subleased to a corporation who then subleases to someone else for that month-long period. So we've noticed an incredible safety risk now in our building. So I don't know what happened to 3B, but we're going to lose safety and we're going to lose rent control if it continues down this trend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Madigan. Lynn, et cetera, to be followed by Anthony Vulin.
Lynn, et cetera, West Hollywood. An absolute no to 3B because basic reality, this is prejudice against low-income poor people and not part of a solution to helping the homeless. I think a judge would invalidate this on the same principles of racial covenants of neighborhoods. There has to be some kind of a solution and answer, maybe antitrust, but anyway, by proxy, LA County is trying to initiate touch-screen voting instead of verifiable hand-marked paper ballots. By proxy, given validation to the continued hacking and corruption theft of elections in some Midwestern and Southern states, thereby the suppression violence of the people. By proxy, State Senator Mr. Weiner is still trying to pass SB 50, destroying single-family neighborhoods in a presidential election year, reviving and motivating the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association with a guaranteed ballot initiative against. By proxy, we are all learning how to adjust our driving to scooters. If you ask any truck driver the most dangerous time to drive, they will say the early morning before dawn because people fall asleep. Mr. Weiner keeps trying to pass a bill to allow bars to stay open till 4 a.m. Wipeout by proxy. Mr. Trump by proxy. I don't see any difference.
Thank you, Mr. et cetera, Anthony Vulin, and our final speaker, Tony Diamond. Our final speaker, Tony Diamond.
Hi. There seems to be a valid argument on both sides for why there should or should not be a minimum requirement of a 1-year lease. I just wanted to mention an idea that I thought could be a compromise that could make both sides happy, which would be to do a moratorium so that the existing corporate apartments could remain in place, but you just wouldn't allow any new ones to open up. Thought that might be an idea you guys would want to, think about. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Diamond. That is the end of our public speaking. If there's no one else, we shall move on to council member comments. Who would like to begin? John?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick announcements. First of all, I see Ted Green out in the audience. Happy birthday, Ted. I know it's your birthday today, so happy birthday to you. Although I question your judgment that you're spending your birthday here rather than out having dinner, but maybe Mr. Litz will take you out for dinner. Just a couple of quick comments. January 26th, Steve Genzel, who was the longtime president of Christopher Street West, passed away a few weeks ago. His memorial is planned at Plummer Park at the Great Hall on January the 26th. It's a public memorial because he was a very public person. You can contact Christopher Street West for more information on that. I wanted to talk about two other things, and then I'll be quiet. You know, we get daily updates on public safety as council members, and West Hollywood is generally a very safe place to live, work, and play. But there's a trend that appears in our morning inboxes that I just want to alert people to, and that is that, you know, there are young men on dark side streets off our commercial corridors waiting for vulnerable people who appear intoxicated walking home from the bars, or people late at night wandering the side streets of West Hollywood. And the primary motive is robbery. It's primarily robbery is what's going on. But it's just a nice time for us all to remember that, you know, on our busy streets, Santa Monica Boulevard or the Sunset Strip, we're all generally very safe because there's plenty of eyes and plenty of eyewitnesses and plenty of people and plenty of cars. But the minute we get onto any of our quiet residential streets, especially in the Norma Triangle, especially in West Hollywood West, where there's not as many people, there are crimes of opportunity that are occurring when people are walking by themselves. So just a reminder, you see a group of young men sitting in their car at 2 in the morning on your residential street, be cautious if you're by yourself, or don't walk alone in the first place. And just be aware of your surroundings, because there appear to be, I'm just going to call it what it is, some young thugs who are recently preying on people in the city of West Hollywood. And we just all need to take care of one another and be aware of that. I also wanted to mention the Chem Sex Forum that's coming up on February 12th. First of all, thank you to Alexis Sanchez and her coalition for being behind the Chem Sex Forum. And my Human Services Commissioner, Jimmy Palmieri, has been active on meth for longer than I can count since he's initiated the Tweakers Project. Crystal meth continues to be a killer in our community, especially now with fentanyl overlay and deadly fentanyl being added as an additional substance to the crystal meth, and now more recently, cocaine. We do have a lot of very young people who like to party, both gay and straight, and I think those individuals, when they go out and party, they don't believe it's going to be their last night on earth. And tragically, with meth, and with meth overlaid with fentanyl, we've just had too many deaths recently. Too many deaths. And it's not the first time. I was looking at some Facebook posts earlier today. People were about, why don't we do something about meth? And we have been doing things about meth for more than 20 years. And it's just a reminder that we need to continue to do that. So there will be the town hall meeting where we'll engage in the continuing discussion around crystal meth. The city does commit many resources to many organizations that are working on sobriety, which leads me into my next topic, which is to thank my colleague, Mayor D'Amico. Mayor D'Amico and I have been engaged in conversations with the city of Beverly Hills on the future of the log cabin site at 621 Robertson. It's a bit complex. Because the land is owned by the city of Beverly Hills. The structure, called the log cabin, is not owned by the city of Beverly Hills, but has passed hands for 100 years, from the Boy Scouts of America to the Lions Club to whoever controls it today. But what we know is that at that particular facility, there are 29 meetings of recovery that happen on a weekly basis, where we have thousands of people attend every month. The Recovery Center is also jam-packed with dozens of meetings every week that occur there. So that part of Robertson, 621 Robertson on one side, the log cabin, 626 Robertson, the other side, the Worley building, there are thousands of people that are seeking relief from alcoholism, seeking relief from drug addiction, from crystal meth. And we are helping stop the spread of HIV and dealing with homelessness in all of this recovery work that happens there. Recovery work is critical as part of our safety net in West Hollywood to stem homelessness, stem the spread of HIV, and of course stop the unnecessary deaths to crystal meth. So we will continue. We're working through our city managers of both cities, and our colleagues over at the Beverly Hills Council to do what we can to make sure that the meetings continue to exist. There's a severe shortage of available space for 12-step meetings to occur. There's only so many church basements that a community has. And so having the reality of 50 meetings a week happening in those two buildings is significant to many people in all cities. And if you're wondering what you can do to help right now, contacting the Beverly Hills Council is critical. Mayor and City Council at beverlyhills.org. We actually have the hairdresser brigade on it. What we realized is a lot of our residents are hairdressers, and a lot of women who get their hair done are residents of Beverly Hills. And so we are using the correlation between the hairdressers of West Hollywood and the women in Beverly Hills to put pressure on the Beverly Hills Council, and it has resulted in 8,000 contacts to the city of Beverly Hills. So hairdresser brigade, keep going. You're doing a
florist.
And yeah, I haven't found the florist, but that's what you can do if you want to get involved with that. And with that, that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Meister.
Thank you. First, I want to wish everyone a very happy and healthy new year. We're back. I also want to thank staff for organizing the Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service event at the West Hollywood Elementary School. As usual, it's a success. On consent calendar, I just wanted to comment on 2P, the amendment regarding the Norwich gathering space. And I'm supportive of the item, but I just want to say that if we had known about widening the sidewalk on Norwich and the possibility of losing parking spaces, it might have been great to have included that as part of the public benefit that developer provided when they got their avenues bonus for that project, which basically allowed them to double the size of the project. So that's something we should think about in the future. Item 2X, I just want to thank my colleagues for supporting that item, which directs staff to lobby for state legislation regarding the regulation of short-term rentals and to lobby the state to gather information on the impacts short-term rentals have had on the housing market. With all of the state's concerns about housing, it amazes me that they're not making more of a concerted effort to understand how short-term rentals have impacted the permanent housing market. So those are my comments. Oh, I think I have actually one more comment. I know that item 6A was tabled, but I just want to mention that that is regarding the incentives on the historic properties, and I'm just concerned that we haven't seen all of the incentives that HPC, the Historic Preservation Commission, recommended. I don't know how long ago. I think it's something that should be presented together because it's really more of a package than it is to look at those things piecemeal.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Heilman.
Thank you. I also want to wish everyone a happy new year and thank everyone involved in the MLK event this weekend. It was a great event, and want to thank the staff and, of course, Larissa for all her many years of organizing that event. We had a couple of public speakers here. Ms. Goldman, I think Christoph Schroeder was talking with you in the back, and I was going to suggest that Mr. Linger, I believe it is, if Christoph, you could have a conversation with him about what options are available currently and what potential legislation there might be to address the concerns. I wanted to address a different topic, and this is the result of a number of people in the last couple of months who have taken their life. And I know that there is a push right now among some people in the community to create some kind of gathering space or some kind of recognition. But I think it is a reminder that with all of the funding that we provide for social services, with all of the support we have, there are still a lot of people who are falling through the cracks. There's still a lot of people who aren't aware of the services that are available. And I think this is an important opportunity for our human services staff and some of our City Hall staff to identify what other resources, what other programmatic activities we can engage in to connect with some of the people who, through depression, through substance abuse, or through other challenges, decide to end their lives. So I'm going to ask that our city manager and our city staff look at this. I've already connected them to one of the people who wrote to us by email, and see what opportunities this presents for us to expand our programs and expand our outreach to people in the community, because we certainly don't want to see that kind of loss. So, and then the gentleman who had the parking ticket, I believe that Jackie has followed up with him, so thank you for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Happy New Year to everyone. To start with our consent agenda items, item 2L, if it's okay with all of my colleagues, I'd like to give additional direction to our staff and maybe to our designee to SCAG, that SCAG should be engaged in our efforts to support Metro coming to West Hollywood. Our alignment will be will have the highest ridership of any light rail alignment in the country, not just LA County, but the entire country. So if they really want to deal with transportation and sustainability issues, that's a big part of the plan. And so if there's no objection from my colleagues, I'd like to see SCAG step up and help us in those efforts. Item 2X, I want to thank Councilmember Meister for bringing this forward. It's been a priority issue for the city, at least since I've been back on the council. And so I know we've been having these conversations through Contract Cities and League of Cities, and Senator McGuire is actually working on a new bill. His last one, which you referenced in your report, was held up by the former Speaker Pro Tem, Senator De Leon, who is now running for local government, interestingly. But hopefully now that there's a clearer path, there will be some progress on this issue at the state level. Since our last council meeting, I participated in the executive committee meetings of the Clean Power Alliance. I attended the California Contract Cities Association January board meeting and participated in their Sacramento legislative tour, which included discussions among a variety of topics, including housing and homelessness, public safety, community choice aggregation, and water. A priority issue for our organization and for local government organizations up in Sacramento right now is SB 50, being able to make sure that we protect local control and the ability to develop our own zoning and create neighborhoods as we wish. And so that was a hot topic of conversation. I know West Hollywood West was particularly engaged in that, and we thank you for the ways that you've been engaged in the conversation. If that bill does not move out of the House of Origin by the end of the month, the conversation is closed. So stay tuned for next steps on that. I also participated in the Liability Trust Fund Claims Board meeting and the Women's March, and I want to give a special shout out to John Erickson, who was one of the three main producers of that event, which brought out over 350,000 people this weekend, which is very fun and very important to be together. I also want to draw our attention to another issue that's been coming up in our community, in addition to some of the comments my colleagues have already shared. We've had multiple incidents and reports of anti-Semitic graffitiing and attacks in the community, some of these amounting to hate crime status. I think it's certainly disturbing and concerning that these actions are happening in our community. They feel particularly targeted, and I know that they make everyone, no matter what faith or any that you practice, it makes everyone feel unsafe. So I know our Sheriff's Department has been diligently working on investigations with regard to the reports that have come forward, but I would ask that our city manager also work closely with the Sheriff's Department to make make sure that we develop a plan of action with our bureau. I know Detective Least, who was spoken about tonight, was our hate crimes coordinator, so making sure that we know who our point person is on those issues in the station, and also making sure that we have a plan of action would be very important. A few things that are coming up tomorrow. There will be Dodgers Pet Family Photo Day. If you are a fan of the Dodgers or you have a dog, that's probably like almost everybody in the city. You can come out tomorrow at 3 p.m. at our dog park. Jock Peterson and Matt Beatty will be there taking photos with fans and their dogs. It's free of charge. It's a fun community event. They're partnering with Paws LA, who will also be present. So it's fun for everyone, free of charge, and open to the community. We hope that you'll join and celebrate our certainly world-class champion LA Dodgers. Also coming up is our city's co-sponsored annual Roe v. Wade commemorative event taking place at the National Council of Jewish Women on the evening of January 30th. They'll be hosting Roe at 47, Brave Past, Endangered Future. And this event will commemorate the landmark court decision Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion in the United States. There will be a special community screening of the film Jane, as well as a panel discussion, and it will also be an interactive event culminating with plans of action on how we can keep the spirit of Roe alive in our communities. The event will take place from 6:30 to 9, and we hope that you are able to attend. 2 more events happening on the same night, this coming Thursday. First is our homeless count. If you haven't already signed up, I hear the numbers are record this year, and thank you to Corey Plank and everyone on her team who is coordinating. But if you are able to participate, it's a very eye-opening event, an important way to engage in understanding how our community is impacted by homelessness and those who are suffering from it. And finally, there's the LA Blade is hosting their Best of Awards this Thursday evening as well, starting at 6 p.m. It's taking place at Rocco's WeHo, and if you are interested in attending, tickets are available on Eventbrite, also free of charge, but they believe it will sell out, so please get your tickets while you still can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give us all reprieve and move right to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I just have a number of items to report on. First, Administrative Services Department is giving you the notice. The deadline to register to vote in the presidential primary is Wednesday, February 18th. The city's clerk division is going to be hosting registration and education pop-up events on the 25th and on February 3rd. One of the events will be at City Hall from 10 to 1 o'clock on the 25th. That's this Saturday, and February 3rd at Farmers Market at Plummer Park. Also, Facilities and Recreation, they have a number of road work projects that are happening. One of the more impactful ones is on Beverly Boulevard. The contractor is maintaining 1 lane of traffic at all times. This construction project will end on the 24th of January. Social Services, an update that January 2nd, the city began providing a 100% fair subsidy for residents who are 62 or over. That's so young these days. So if you want a Metro bus pass and you're a resident and you're qualified, you can visit West Hollywood City Hall and get your bus pass. For more information, you can call City Hall at 323-848-6510. Also, there were some questions earlier about social services and updating our brochures and information. We do have updated brochures that are going to be provided at this weekend's workshop. They'll be in English, Russian, and Spanish. Lastly, the Rent Stabilization Division is hosting 2 workshops. These are free for rental housing in West Hollywood. We're going to have a tenants workshop on February 4th and the 11th, and a landlords workshop on February 18th and the 25th. You can call the Rent Stabilization and Housing Division for more information. That number is 323-848-6450. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes all of our reports. We'll now hear the fiscal impact on the consent calendar.
Yes, I received an update from staff regarding item 2V. So the memo that you have before you is requesting that you approve $145 in waived fees. The fee is actually $190 that we're requesting that it be waived. So that's regarding 2V.
Without objection.
Thank you. And with that, in the addition of items 5B, 5C, 5D, 5F, and 6B, the fiscal impact for tonight is $1,772,985 in expenditures, $0 in potential revenue, and $861 in waived fees.
Thank you very much. We have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Horvath and a second from Councilmember Heilman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Our consent calendar is approved. We shall now move on to item 3A, which is a general plan amendment regarding earthquake fault zones and the earthquake fault zone map.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Before we begin, I'm just going to say we're opening the public hearing. It looks like we have a couple of speakers. We probably don't need much of a presentation. Why don't we hear from why don't you introduce yourselves and then we'll hear from the speakers. If they have some questions that your presentation can answer, then we'll...
Mayor, I wish to make a disclosure too before we begin the hearing that I actually live in one of the new earthquake zones. I don't feel I have a conflict, but my apartment is in one of the new zones.
And I would just like to ask that staff at least show the maps and the difference from before and after.
All right.
Thank you, Mayor and council members, members of the public. My name is Rachel Diamond. I'm a senior planner in the Long Range Planning Division in Planning and Community Development. Tonight before you, we have a general plan amendment to update our fault zone map in the general plan. I'll skip the background since we're going quickly here, but what I'd like to talk about is an update to our existing local seismic zones. We have two zones in the city of West Hollywood, the FP1 zone and the FP2 zone. In short, the FP1 zone is the zone that most likely, given data on previous fault studies, to be an area where faults exist in the city, and basically properties that are within the FP1 zone are required to do a fault rupture investigation to determine whether there's active faults on the property, and if so, they're required to build a minimum of 50 feet from those active fault zones. If they find no fault located on the property, then they don't need to make any changes. They just need to comply with the building code. And the FP2 zone is a little less likely to contain a fault, and basically you're required that same fault rupture investigation unless you provide an enhanced reinforced foundation. Most people just opt to go for the enhanced reinforced foundation and don't actually conduct those studies in that zone. The state recently adopted an update to their map, which is called the Alquist-Priolo State Map. These are typically called AP zones for short, and you can see the zone has changed slightly from our FP1 zone, and so when you overlay those two, you get this comparison map. And so just bear with me so I can show you the comparison. Basically, parcels that are in the new AP only zone parcels that are in the AP zone only are shown in yellow. Those are new and would be FP1. Parcels that are in the AP map and the FP1 zone are shown in orange. That's a vast majority of what's on the map today. So those would be parcels that have no change in their requirements. And then you'll see in red parcels that were previously FP2 that are in the AP zone that would need to become FP1. In the blue, you see parcels that are existing FP1 but are outside of the AP zone. And then in green, parcels that are in FP2 today but also outside of the state's AP zone. So basically, this is the proposed map. So what you see in green is effectively, and just to go back, anything that was currently FP1 or FP2 but is outside of the state zone, we would revert to FP2. Anything that's in the state's AP zone would be FP1, shown in orange. There is a change for a number of properties, but effectively we maintain that this provides an extensive safety kind of safety net for the city and for our development in the city. So generally, what would happen now is that any properties that fall within this FP1 would be subject to those more enhanced regulations. This would be an amendment to the general plan because that's where this map is today. The map is currently located in an appendix and it's a little bit difficult to find. So I think a key feature to highlight is that we're bringing this map into the forefront of the general plan so that it's more easily accessible to the community. With that, I'm available for any questions. We also have Chris Sexton, one of our consultants, available.
Any questions?
I just want to disclose that my building is in the fault zone already, and it doesn't appear to change at all. So I don't think I have to recuse myself.
And I have a question for the city attorney. So properties that are brought into the fault zone that have entitlements but don't have, for example, haven't started construction or haven't had their drawings approved, but if they have entitlements, they don't have to go back and have a review. They just continue to move forward. This is for properties that are not yet entitled?
For properties that are entitled but may still need to come in for a building permit, it's my understanding that they might have to submit some additional structural information when they get their building permit, but it shouldn't impact their entitlements. And I believe that there's only a handful of properties in the city that would even be in that category.
Okay. Howard, Brian Chapnick, and Andrew Block.
Hello, City Council. My name is Howard Brian Chapnick. I'm an idiot savant. I'm just saying that because it gives me a kind of a character here. But I've got a 6th grade education, but I'm flourishing in something called a genius value. I'm precognitive. I've identified a triple homicide in West Hollywood during the Kings Road, Bernard Kilili. I saved another person there. I've done many different things, but I've also breached quantum physics. I don't know if you all have any clue what that means. I can activate paranormal activity, and activating paranormal activity is a release of seismic energy, which is the release of a possible earthquake. I can go further on this. Then we have 1937, the laws of medical marijuana were illegal. We have time dilation that's in place between that 37 until right now, and the time dilation says it's worse than prohibition of the alcohol age, which was about 10 years, because the time is much more dangerous. And the laws here that are surrounding the medical, the marijuana and the medical are corruptive and are dangerous. You have marijuana establishments open up with such taxation of 39%. I buy $100 worth of marijuana, it costs me $139 out the door, plus a tip maybe, so maybe $170 out the door. That is spawning a drug dealer at the wholesale level. In 33 states, in this state it is, and the more retail shops you open up, and this is prohibition, you guys have done nothing wrong, this is falling in your lap. You didn't do this, you're dealing with this. But with dealing with it, there's lots of dangers, and you have a flourishing drug dealer in West Hollywood, all around the city, and it shows that even in South Central, and right when the legalization in 2018 started popping up, the shootings, violence went up because it's a new crack city. It's the cheapest and most affordable drug to sell and cover other drugs. There's lots of stuff. I'm finding a way to communicate with you, maybe outside of here or somewhere else, and thank you for listening. Bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chapnick. Andrew Block is our final speaker.
Hello, good evening. Name is Andrew Block, resident owner of a property affected that it will be included now in this new earthquake zone, 8970 Cynthia Street. I've been working and planning to develop this single-family residence into a duplex. As we know, there is a shortage of housing in the area. And if we can pull up the map, it's not, I don't know how important it is, but basically my property is one of those that is partially in the zone and partially completely out of the zone. So the effect, in my understanding, is that other cities are suggesting and saying, City of Los Angeles, City of Santa Monica, that only the part of the property that is in the zone would actually be affected, not the part of the property outside of the zone. So my understanding is the adoption of the map, putting my entire property into the zone. I've been, even before discussion of this new map, working with geotechnical engineers And my understanding is that the adoption of this new map would incur an additional $10,000 to $15,000 of costs to me, an additional investigation of this land. I'm sitting on a 3,600 square foot property. I can imagine that there could be other implications for other property owners. And I think if we really look at it, and even talking to geotechnical engineers, the probability of an actual fault line being discovered is so low. I think they said less than 1%. So I would ask that take into consideration and not include the portion of the property that is not actually in the zone, and or an exemption for a small property like mine or some type of exception be considered. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Block. Victor Omachenko?
Victor Omolchenko, longtime West Hollywood resident. Well, we're all interested in public safety, and it's good to see that we are looking forward to updating the general plan amendment with these new earthquake fault zone map revision. I support the staff recommendation, and what I wanted to bring up was the fact that so many people do come to meetings, and it's all, a lot of it is about public noticing. So I do save some materials, and this was the last notice that the public got when we were considering as a city, and you were considering as our city council, the seismic retrofitting of our already existing buildings, our soft story structure buildings. So while we do go ahead and amend this, as you consider amending this, I do think that in the future it will be interesting to actually find out some results about maybe what has been happening with the seismic retrofitting that I understand owners are to undertake. There had been a move afoot to have some cost sharing between owners and tenants in these rent-stabilized buildings that could possibly fall down in a seismic event, but that did not happen. But we need to find out what's happening with that, because we do want to have public safety. And in looking at this document, it was replete with information that was, I feel, understandable to the public. Unlike the recent document that came out about the public hearing, granted, on 3B, it was tabled, it did attract people, but if you look at the document that was sent citywide, it doesn't give context, it doesn't give a reasoning. All it talks about is first reading, second reading, a lot of government-ease gobbledygook. I think we could have our wording improved so that we can get more people out to these meetings, so it's understandable to them exactly what is being discussed and what the impact is of the proposed change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Victor. So I actually have two questions. One based on the answer from the city attorney regarding existing projects. I understand that this is a new map, but I think projects that have gone through our process and been designed around a map that was in place for a decade or more, suddenly we're changing it, and then they have to do more geological surveys and more effort. I just can't support that. And then the second question I would have is regarding two-story structures that are in single family or very, very low density neighborhoods. I can't understand why we would require that kind of seismic investigation and overlay, given the sort of ease with which you can build a one-story, certainly a two-story structure. It's not over parking, it's not type 5 construction over a concrete deck. I mean, it's a very simple construction that is actually built, in fact, to move in those kinds of events. So I actually have some empathy for the speaker regarding that, and every property that is now part of this that's in our very low density neighborhood. So maybe you can address those two comments.
Sure. So as it relates to the requirement for low density, there are some exceptions to the requirements in the FP1 zone, including for single-family homes and some additions. And there's also the ability to request exemptions and variances from the requirements under certain circumstances. That's something that is reviewed on a case-by-case basis by our geological consultants, our geotechnical consultants. But, so I can't speak directly to that property and what they're planning to build, but certainly there are ways to construct a single-family home on properties that are in those zones. You would still have to do the investigation to see what you're dealing with. Can you repeat the other piece of that?
So let's talk about that just for a second, if you all don't mind. So what I think you're suggesting is that then they involve themselves in yet another process of getting a variance from our city when a single-family home could in fact be approved over the counter. So and the study you're asking for is a soil study to study whether this, the fault exists on that property. But if they had come in 3 months earlier and gotten it approved, we wouldn't be doing any investigation. And I understand that this is an iterative process and it will always be, but I would think that the threshold for exemption for single-family and two-story structures, from my point of view, should be reconsidered or have a process that's different than requiring the application for a variance, which is a very cumbersome and complicated and time-consuming. I mean, it can take 7 months, 8 months to get through a variance process with our planning commission. And the second question was, it's actually about the property that comes to mind is the Arts Club. That project is approved and it's in plan check, and I just wonder if now it has to go back to do some additional studies because it wasn't initially included in that zone.
I believe it is located in the, you can see, sorry.
This is the proposed map, I believe.
Right, and so you can see from this map as well. Just bear with me for one moment. The Arts Club.
It's
right
one
here.
One more block over to the west.
Right here.
One more.
One more west.
Right there, yes.
Right here?
Yeah.
Right, so that property is located in the state's updated AP only and is not currently in our FP1 or FP2 zones.
So it does not need additional study.
So it will change as this part of this proposal. It's being changed to FP1. I can't speak to what investigations they've already conducted on the site, considering they're on Sunset, or whether they would need to make any changes to the project.
Okay. Any other questions? Anyone, please?
Yeah, on the existing local fault map, the FP2 goes all the ways across the fault line. And then on the new map, only the east side has this FP2, which is kind of a buffer zone. My understanding is that Planning Commission wanted that same type of buffer zone to go across on the west side, and we're not seeing a map with what they recommended.
Right, so they didn't recommend a specific buffer. What they had requested is that the city investigate whether the FP2 zone should be considered a buffer along the fault and expanded to include other properties that could benefit from enhanced foundations. What we found is generally people move towards the enhanced foundations, which in the case of larger buildings, they tend to have those already with the building code requirements. That's certainly something that council could direct staff to do and work with our city geologists.
I mean, because why wouldn't we want to err on the side of caution?
We certainly could. Our main goal for this process was to make sure that our maps complied with the updated state maps and not expand on our zones at all.
Okay, and then the requirement on the studies that have to be done, going back to the mayor's question, are those requirements state requirements, or are they our requirements?
They're state requirements, so all of this stems from the Alquist-Priolo Act and any updates to those requirements by the state. We have our own regulations, but they effectively mirror the state regulation.
So that gentleman who spoke, what he's going to have to go through with the new map is because of what the state is requiring, or what?
That's correct.
Okay.
Effectively both at this point, should we adopt this map moving forward.
Okay, and then a question for Lauren. If we're looking at this earlier map, the existing map versus the map, the proposed map that staff has proposed on attachment F. I mean, they could have taken off the green, right? I mean, to be not discriminating against the east side, I mean, shouldn't whatever this green represents, which I understand it's FP2, but in a sense, it is a buffer zone that's asking for some additional study compared to not being in that zone. Why wouldn't you want it on the west side for consistency?
I think I believe the FP2 is completely local determination. It's a local decision that we have included these extra requirements on these properties, so it would be a local policy decision how, and based on the geotechnical expertise, where that buffer should go, but the FP2 is local policy.
Okay, so.
It's not based on the state
Right,
map.
and so especially because it's local policy, wouldn't it make sense and legally protect us that we have consistency on the west side and the east side, that be consistent, that FP2 or buffer zone? I mean, if you designate just the east side, a number of properties with that FP2 zone, and you don't designate the same distance from the FP1 on the west side, I mean, that seems to me to be an issue that could become a legal issue. So that's my question to you.
I know that we have the consultant here, and he may better be able to explain why the lines were drawn the way they do and where this recommendation comes from.
Right, well, the FP, this is Chris Sexton with Tetra Tech. I'm your reviewing geologist for the city. The FP2 zone was established before my time, and it was established for technical reasons. There were reasons to expect there, could be smaller displacements in that area, and that they felt they could accommodate those with foundations. And they just didn't find it as far south over on the west side. So it wasn't as much a matter of a buffer as a matter of what the information that they had at hand at the time led them to conclude.
Can I follow up with that? Because I'm not sure. I want to make sure I understand. The buffer zone that's on the east side is based on the topography and the geological conditions in that particular neighborhood.
Right.
And those weren't found on the west side. That's why we have what appears to be a larger buffer zone further east than we do on the west side.
Right. The appearance of the map is a function of the way the state overlaid their zone on top of your existing zones.
So it isn't like there was just a policy, let's have a lot of, buffer on the east side and let's not have a lot of buffer on the west side. It was all based on this technical information that we have from you and previous geologists.
Right.
Thank you.
If I just can follow up, but the Planning Commission's recommendation is to direct staff to work with the city geologist to determine whether increasing the FP2 zone would be recommended on the west side. Is that right?
That was their recommendation.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions and want to make a motion?
I'm prepared to move to close the public hearing and move the recommendation.
Second. All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Heilman and second by Councilmember Duran. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. No.
No. Can you clarify which recommendation you're talking about, Councilmember Heilman? The staff recommendation to not include the
staff recommendation that's in our agenda, which is the resolution amending the safety and noise element of the general plan to include a new fault location and precaution zone map.
Okay, but not the Planning Commission's recommendation.
No,
Okay.
We have a geologist here, and I believe that what we're doing here is updating based on the changes in the state. And I don't think there's really, if the geologists thought there were other areas that needed to be amended, I'm presuming that they would have told us that.
Great. So we have the motion passes 3-2. We're going to
Mayor?
move on to item 3B.
Mayor?
Yes,
Sorry, I didn't hear the no vote.
that was me.
Okay.
Item 3B, we have tabled. We are now moving to item 4A, which is a discussion of appointments to city council subcommittees. Mr. City Manager, Ms. City Attorney, are you giving us this, or is Christoph?
I'm going to start it off.
Oh,
Yvonne.
Yvonne, okay.
I'll be brief. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. The item before you tonight is an item requesting that council review and discuss the current City Council subcommittees and consider adding, dissolving, or restructuring them as needed. Each year after the City Council reorganization, my office brings an item to council to appoint themselves as delegates and alternates to various organizations, committees, and conferences. During that time, council also appoints themselves to City Council subcommittees. During the last appointment period, staff asked council to table the subcommittee appointments so that the city attorney, staff, and the city clerk may review the subcommittees and bring back an item for discussion. The goal of the item before you is to clarify and review the subcommittees, the status of each subcommittee, and determine whether they should become an active ad hoc, which is a temporary subcommittee, or become a standing subcommittee, or if the work that has was designed for them has been completed and the subcommittee should be dissolved. Each subcommittee is outlined in the report with the recommendation from staff, that's included. And overall, staff is recommending that for the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, that it become a standing subcommittee and subject to the Brown Act. For the Metro and CSW subcommittees, that they be restructured so that council can appoint one council member as a council liaison to engage on the council's behalf. For the WeHo Park, Plummer Park, and 1343 Laurel projects, staff is recommending that those be dissolved with the ability for council to appoint members to an ad hoc subcommittee and outline specific tasks and include a time frame for it to be dissolved at a future meeting. For the gateway signage and wayfinding projects, we're requesting that council formally designate these two as ad hoc subcommittees with specific tasks and include a time frame for it to be dissolved when staff brings the item before council at a future meeting. I'm available for questions along with the Assistant City Attorney.
I do have a question, if I may. Are you asking us tonight to consider the recommendations you've made about continuing, dissolving, et cetera, and to make new appointments where you've recommended, or simply to restructure and then discussion of appointments would happen at a later date?
I would leave that to council. Some of them are framed in the way where you could make an appointment tonight, and some of them are asking that you wait until staff brings an item back to council and appointments can be made at that time, because you'll need to talk about what tasks that subcommittee will be undertaking and how long that subcommittee should be in effect.
Okay.
All right, so what about if we go through these one by one? The Finance and Budget Subcommittee, without objection, I think we want to make sure that our mayor and the mayor pro tem, whoever are those people, have an open public meeting and discuss the budget over the course of the year. Does anyone have a
I was
different
just
point?
going to suggest that maybe it makes sense to have that along with the staff public meeting rather than duplicate it, so we could have the council subcommittee and the staff have the public forum with the public. That way we wouldn't have two separate meetings.
I believe that was the intent.
Oh, that was the intent?
Yes.
Okay.
And if we need a separate meeting, we know how to post and notice a meeting, and then we can have a meeting. The Plummer Park Subcommittee recommends this be dissolved at this time. Any objection? No, none? Okay. The West Hollywood Park Phase 2, recommending that this also be dissolved at this time?
I know that the idea is that we want to avoid having lots of subcommittees that have to comply with the Brown Act and noticing requirements. It's cumbersome and it doesn't always work. But I think this project does need some additional attention and ongoing attention. Maybe it isn't through a subcommittee, but maybe we could ask staff to think about how it is that we get that input from the council. And maybe it's just bringing it back to the council more regularly. But particularly when we get to the FF&E, I think there needs to be some input, and maybe we create a subcommittee at that time.
Or what about appointing a council liaison position like is being recommended in some of the other areas?
That's a possibility as well.
Is there a preference either way from staff or colleagues?
I'd like to see a liaison.
To just dive in on this, if the council does want to appoint a liaison, that could be helpful. We are in the process of putting together an update for council in terms of timeline and other issues that are pending with the project. Having that liaison would be helpful. I think also as we get further along in the project, when we get to the FF&E, the fixtures, furniture, and equipment, it may be at that time that we do appoint the task force with an individual focus on that to help guide that particular part of the project.
Just thinking that with liaisons, usually that's with an external organization or entity. Maybe that's what we do externally, but internally, we either get rid of the subcommittee or have it be on a limited basis.
So what if we had an update on the park at a future meeting in the next 30 days, perhaps? And during that, we can decide if, as a group, we need to have more oversight or less, or it's the right amount, or... Okay. The Marketing and Visitors Bureau, which isn't even called that anymore, we're recommending that that subcommittee be dissolved. The Laurel Avenue Council Subcommittee.
On the MVB,
Yes.
years ago, we had a liaison, and maybe that's something that makes sense, but I'm going to defer to Paul whether that's needed. I know that staff works closely. I agree we shouldn't have a council subcommittee that isn't active.
Yeah, I serve as an ex officio as well as others on staff. We would, in the past, and I don't think it was a regular basis, the subcommittee would be invited to their strategic planning sessions. And I went to this year's, and I don't think you would have wanted to be there. So this one, I don't think it's been really a regular meeting and a regular interaction, so if it goes away, it wouldn't be critical.
Okay.
All right, the Laurel Avenue Council Subcommittee, there's a recommendation to keep this. There's a lot bubbling up over there.
I'd like to keep it, I'd like to stay on it.
All right.
And I would also, Lauren and I have been working on this one. I'd like to stay on it if possible.
Without objection, we'll keep that and we'll post it and we'll keep Councilmember Duran and Meister.
I think this one would be an ad hoc subcommittee.
Correct.
And staff will come back at a future date so you can talk about the specific tasks, the specific time.
Got it.
That subcommittee would be in existence.
Thank you. The Metro Council Subcommittee, there's a suggestion that this be eliminated, and we have one person as a liaison. And I know that the two of you have worked on it quite a bit.
If it's okay with you, I'd like to continue, so I'd like to serve as the liaison, because I can go to all of the meetings.
Yeah, I think you've been doing a lot of those individual meetings, but I actually think it's useful to have several people from the council involved. So I don't support this recommendation.
Well, we could have you come back with a suggestion about an ad hoc committee and the items you'd be following up on, which would be go to meetings
Right.
and present our point of view. I mean,
We could talk to staff and see if there are specific items that an ad hoc subcommittee could undertake and create a time frame for that as well.
I mean, and I think, I mean, I don't want to speak for them, they were on the subcommittee, but I know that I had a very high level of confidence that our points of view were very carefully articulated over and over and over again, and I would hate to lose that as we're heading towards what's probably really the end of the first part and the beginning of the second part of 25 parts. You know, so I think we need to have people present at those meetings. So that would be my recommendation.
So we'll look to see if there's some benchmarks that can be articulated for an ad hoc subcommittee and report back on that.
And it's possible we have actually two things. We have a council subcommittee and we have an official liaison from the council to Metro and to some of the other external agencies.
We can explore that and report back.
The homeless subcommittee, staff is recommending that this be dissolved. I mean, just the optics on this look kind of bad because we're really in a crisis across the county, and perhaps it's cumbersome, but I just think we need to continue to have focus on this item.
I also want to say, too, that while I know there are a variety of reasons why we have to revisit these changes, I want to commend all of my colleagues on the different ones that we've served on, because if you look at the scope of each of these subcommittees, these projects have actually been moving forward quite successfully. And I think the conversations and substantive input that each of these subcommittees have dealt with have been important and helpful, and actually, like I said, successful projects in the city. So I just want to state that for the record too. I think homelessness subcommittee is a particular example of that. So.
And it might be useful if we're going to continue this. I'm interested in continuing, but if we're going to continue it, having a little bit more structure, or I don't want it to turn into a formal subcommittee in that way, but maybe even scheduling some meetings in advance of, so it's been very difficult for Lauren and I with our schedules to always coordinate with staff, so having some kind of structure would be useful, I think, for us.
And we are dealing with outside as well, with the county and the state, so.
We agree. I think we were looking at it because homelessness and the issues surrounding it are very important to our city. We developed a whole division to handle those things. So it was just to dissolve it for now, and if there is a specific issue or task that comes up that Corey's team or the city manager will bring forward to council, that at that time a subcommittee could be put together. But we could also look at, as you stated, having a liaison to attend the meetings with those outside entities, the county, and various organizations that Corey's team deals with. So we could look at that and bring something back as well.
Are we all good with that?
Well, I think that if we discontinue the subcommittee, I think Lauren and I are probably going to be bringing forth some items in terms of changing some of the programmatic aspects, maybe even looking at different approaches to what we're doing, because I think we all see it. There's some people who are out on the street. They're still out on the street despite all of the investment of our resources. We don't really have the tools to get them off of the street, even when we have shelter available. So we may need to look at different ways and different approaches to what we're doing.
Okay, and it could also change to a standing subcommittee where those items can be brought forward and we agendize it, and it's a public meeting where we get input on that. It has to be either or. If we're going to have continuous conversations about it and a subcommittee is put together, it would need to be a standing subcommittee. Even if you only met 3-4 times a year, but if it's something that's a continuing subject matter, it would need to change from ad hoc to standing.
Okay.
Yeah, I would, even though I'm not a member of that committee, I would advocate that we have a standing subcommittee on homelessness, at least for the time being.
Let's make a quick comment. I pressed my speaker button. Just a quick comment. I think we're analyzing this the wrong way. I think that if the work is being done and it's being done well, then just notice it per the Brown Act and let the subcommittee stand. I feel like we're doing this backwards. We're trying to get around the requirement of having to notice Brown Act. There is nothing that I've ever said or done in a subcommittee that I wouldn't feel open to the entire public. We're working hard. We're sitting there. We're discussing issues with staff. Notice it. open it up. Maybe one or two people come. Probably nobody comes. It doesn't really matter. So I think rather than going through this the way we're doing it, just if we think the work is important and we want to continue to do it, just notice it and do it. Takes a little more planning, so what? That's just my 2 cents.
I'm there, but I think there are some additional, that's a lot of bureaucracy to get 2 people in a room to have a conversation with a third member of staff about an item that is ongoing. But I agree. I mean, I think that I think all of us have said when we think something should continue that we have, and others. For example, the Plummer Park Subcommittee. I mean, we don't think that subcommittee's met for a year,
No.
so it doesn't really need to exist.
Correct. So then dissolve those. Dissolve those that don't meet. Yeah.
Right. So, I guess I heard someone ask if that was a motion. We could certainly take that as one.
I wasn't trying to disrupt the process.
Okay.
I think we're doing great. Just keep knocking down the ones that are not productive, and the ones we decide to keep, just Brown Act them. And
the CSW Pride Subcommittee, I know that there's a recommendation that a liaison position be created, but this is one where, I mean, I've been involved since I joined the council. I kind of think this subcommittee, or at least an ad hoc committee, needs to exist, and we need to tell people that they're invited to come. This Pride and CSW has continued to improve year after year because of these meetings, and I think we get to sort of get a 40% temperature take when we have these meetings, and better than a 20% temperature take, because I very rarely disagree with myself. So I just think, in this case, I think this subcommittee should exist, or we should knowingly post that we're going to have an ad hoc committee and people are invited anyway, and just continue doing it. So I leave it up to you all, but I think we need to have the flexibility. I think, John, you and I are on this subcommittee, and we need to be able to meet with them between now and June to go through, Melrose, blah, blah, Almont, blah, blah, funding, this amount, that amount, and have the discussion so that we come with an item to the city council that makes sense, at least to a 40% level.
And are you referring to having meetings with CSW staff and board?
Yeah.
I think that's why we were requesting that maybe it change to a council liaison, so that that person could have those meetings, attend those meetings, and then report back to council, because ultimately everything that is going to be approved is approved by the full council.
Right.
So that was our suggestion on this one, because it's every year ongoing, multiple meetings throughout the year. So if you had a standing subcommittee meeting, it would be the 2 council members, maybe someone from CSW, having sort of a secondary meeting on what CSW is having a meeting on. So
Right, but typically CSW would come with items that involve the city. If I went, or someone went to their meeting, we'd be hearing about who they're making a contract to sell Pepsi with, who's going to deliver the tents, how many hours it's going to take to make a stage, and then maybe they would have 4 minutes about the city of West Hollywood won't let us set up a medical tent on Melrose. We have to pull it back onto San Vicente. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, they come to us with their concerns about the city. We don't have to listen to, Pink won't show up until 10:30, so we have to have somebody else perform at 9:45, whatever that is, So that's why I'm saying I think I would like that subcommittee to continue.
I'm wondering if it's possible to, I know we don't want to have an ongoing committee that has subject matter, because then it becomes a Brown Act committee. Is it possible to have an ad hoc subcommittee that meets with CSW, say, 2 or 3 times in the period from December to May, and that's the only purview, and then that committee dissolves, and then the next year we create a new ad hoc subcommittee?
I think the problem with that is that it really is an annual event and it's an ongoing subject matter that you continue to discuss. And also, if you have regular meetings, it creates a standing committee as well. So it's either, specific task, specific time, and then it dissolves and the issue is no longer pending, or it needs to be a standing, long-term subcommittee with open and public meetings. I think those are our two options.
Yeah, I think for this one, I agree in particular with Councilmember Duran. We encourage CSW to meet with the public about what the public wants the event to be. It seems that we should be holding ourselves to the same standard.
And I don't think anyone's wanting us to design these meetings so we don't have to have Brown Act meetings. At least I don't. I was just, there's several meetings in which we just don't meet. So we have this sort of this like Damocles sword, like you have the Plummer Park Subcommittee and you've never published a Brown Act. Well, we never had a meeting. So we should just say we don't have those, and the 3 or 2 that we have, then we.
Okay, so I will put for the CSW Pride Subcommittee that it be a standing subcommittee.
Okay. And the gateway signage, that this be an ad hoc council, formal ad hoc council subcommittee to review signage and wayfinding. And the AIDS monument, a formal ad hoc council subcommittee for that as well. So I guess maybe the thing to do is to come back with a grid for us to put names in, and we'll take it from there. And in the meantime, between now and 2 weeks from now, I don't think we have any scheduled.
Well, I do want to alert that originally we were going to have a pretty comprehensive item for CSW gearing up for next year on this agenda, and it's slated to be on the next agenda. So I think that in terms of some of the follow-up with them, I mean, they're I don't want to say they're desperate, they're anxious to get their footprint for the event. So that's, we're moving forward with that particular part of the request.
That doesn't necessarily have to go before the subcommittee.
Okay.
If you're ready to bring it forward, you could just bring it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Right.
And they can contact each of us separately. We just can't tell us what the rest of us said. So
Right. Thank you.
it's certainly a way to have those conversations. All right, so did we give enough direction for item 4A?
Yes, thank you.
Terrific. Item 5A. There were no speakers, right, for 4A? Good. Item 5A, pedestrian and bicycle wayfinding signage program.
My apologies, Mayor. We have one speaker for item 4A.
Thank you.
I was doing double duty. Victor Omochenko?
Mr. Victor.
Subcommittees, some of which never met. I was on one that was called the ad hoc subcommittee to maybe look around and see if we could purchase parcels of vacant land. We never had a meeting, but there were meetings at the Public Facilities Commission, the subcommittee on the heritage trees. That is still a standing subcommittee. And so what I'm happy to see is that you do plan on maintaining a standing subcommittee which is open to the public, which is must conform with the Brown Act regulations, and that's on the very, very important topic of finance and budget. So I'm happy to see that. I hope you follow through with that and that we maintain that standing subcommittee. In fact, in years past, I've looked at the budget and made suggestions to you. I remember Councilmember Heilman mentioning that it's one of the most important documents that's passed in the city, and yet it sometimes looks like it's given short shrift. But as the staff report shows, there would still be, I guess, the workshop that the city staff conducts here in the auditorium for the public, but also the standing subcommittee would have a couple of meetings once a year, especially because so many of these items that you consider are multi-year, multitasking kind of things. And with the others, I find it, I think some of them should be dissolved. I think that the homelessness I think what I'm hearing is that the homelessness subcommittee would be a standing committee. That's a very, very important issue, one of the most important issues that I know we need to tackle as a local community, as the county, as the state, as the nation. So let's keep our eyes focused on that also. So thank you very much for your consideration and your very hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Omchenko. All right, item 5A is a pedestrian bicycle wayfinding signage program. John or Brian, do you have a short presentation about this?
Sure, I'll give you a quick presentation. Council members, Brian Eck, Acting Long Range Planning Manager. The item before you is a consideration of a wayfinding signage program to direct bicyclists and pedestrians in the city of West Hollywood. The city's Transportation Commission recommended that the City Council approve such a program at their meeting on November 20th of last year. The recommendation from staff is to pilot this wayfinding system as part of the Willoughby Vista Gardner Greenway project through a public participation process and to return to City Council following evaluation to consider a citywide program. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
One question I had, if it's going to be part of the Willoughby and Vista Gardner Greenway project, does that mean it won't begin for a couple of years, or can this be something that is acted upon immediately if the council so wishes?
Yeah, the Willoughby project is ongoing. It's already underway. The second major public participation event will be in March or April of this year. So it'd be something that we could tack on to the project already underway. So yes, upon approval, we could get started right away on this.
Great.
Anyone else have any questions? All right, Michael Schneider, Josh Verg, you'll have to say your name to me, Josh, and I'll repeat it, and then Kevin Burton.
Good evening. I'm Michael Schneider. I'm the chair of the Mid-City West Transportation Committee on the Los Angeles Bicycle Advisory Committee and the founder of Streets for All. I, along with Josh, are the interested parties that staff referenced that first brought this project to the city of West Hollywood. This sample, ignore the scooters, we've removed them per staff's recommendation, and add walking time per the commission's feedback. Our goal here is to create a climate change friendly alternative to driving while keeping people safe. Your city has a climate action plan. This plan states to reduce its impact on climate change and cut greenhouse emissions by 25% by 2035, and this would help that goal. Specifically, we'd like to create a low-stress bike network in the city of West Hollywood, using less trafficked neighborhood streets and routes that currently may be only known to frequent cyclists. Additionally, this will show people how quickly they can get around just by walking. If walking or biking is shown to be quicker than driving, including time looking for parking, more people will do it. I bike in and through your city multiple times a week, have lived adjacent to your city for 8 years. In designing this project, we took into account your own 2017 pedestrian and bicycle mobility plan and added my experience as both a cyclist and driver in the area. This can be a small but significant win without necessitating the big political fights over road reconfigurations. With regards to staff's estimate of $67,500, we'd like to point out that we have a vendor that can produce 143 signs, reflective, anti-graffiti coating, which would cover the entire city, not just Willoughby, for a total cost of $6,700. While this doesn't include installation, we do think the project can be done for much less than estimated. Lastly, we would encourage the council to direct staff to treat this project as independent from the Willoughby Vista Gardner Greenway. While we love the Greenway project, the only way to test a network of wayfinding signs is to actually create a network, not just do it on a few streets. We'd love to see this rolled out in months, not years. These signs can save lives and help the city accomplish its own climate goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh.
It's Redivo. Thank you. I am a designer. I live here in LA. I travel through West Hollywood occasionally. I worked with Michael to help design these signs. As Michael said, we need to get people out of cars to meet climate goals. 60% of emissions in the city of West Hollywood are from transportation. Fewer people driving means less CO2 emitted, improved air quality, and fewer hours wasted in traffic. West Hollywood is a small city. It can be crossed at its longest point in less than 25 minutes and less than an hour walking and less than 25 minutes on a bike. In many ways, it's the perfect candidate for active transportation mode share change. I want to emphasize this project has utility as an advertising tool. People are stuck in habits, especially when it comes to transportation, sitting in traffic and you see a sign and it says that you could be where you're trying to go in less time 5 minutes ago. That makes people change habits. For example, from this building, you could get to the Sunset Strip in 5 minutes on a bike. You could get to Melrose High Street in 2 minutes. You could get to City Hall in 5 minutes. Like, that's the same margin of time that it can take just to find parking sometimes. Biking and walking aren't affected by traffic. You could never make a signage program like this for cars because traffic would change. Michael and I put the work into designing this system because we care. We understand the signs will probably change as designs are reworked to meet city color schemes and transportation DOT standards. As much as useful, we'd like to be part of the program, help wherever we can. We're both cyclists. We both understand the safe network of streets around this area. Again, this is a low-cost test. If there's any reason it doesn't work, we can remove the signs really quickly. We see this as a very low-risk project with a potentially really high reward if it changes mode share goals. It'll help build a healthier and more navigable city and help West Hollywood meet its climate targets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kevin Burton.
Good morning, good evening again, Council. I'm Kevin Burton, resident of West Hollywood, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Bicycle Coalition of West Hollywood. And we support this proposal very strongly, and we want to thank the Transportation Commission for having unanimously supported this proposal. I want to remind the Council that wayfinding signage is not a new idea for bicyclists or pedestrians. It was proposed by the Bicycle Task Force and proposed several times in the 2017 Bicycle and Pedestrian Mobility Plan. That proposal came from the community. Many people said we would like to have wayfinding signage, show us the way to destinations, and routes that would be safe for us as bicyclists or pedestrians to walk to these destinations. So this particular proposal also includes, as previous speakers said, timing for both pedestrians and bicyclists, which, as we know, isn't really feasible for people in cars because of the uncertainty in traffic. But when I set off to come to these meetings, I know it's going to take me 15 minutes to bicycle here from the east side. And that's something that can be added to wayfinding signage for bicyclists and pedestrians. Finally, I do want to point out that it's not only about bicyclists and pedestrians. All this wayfinding is pointing to destinations from every intersection on this proposed network where the signs are located. Drivers will be looking at these too. And it's large enough for drivers to read the arrows and the destinations. Thank you.
Thank you, and we have some citizen position slips.
Just one slip. Victor Omolchenko did not wish to speak, but wanted to express his support for the recommended item.
All right, anyone have any comments? I do, if nobody else does. I appreciate this. I think it's a kind of a bit of a Luddite idea. I mean, I think most people who've been to West Hollywood, if they ride a bike, like I do, know how long it takes to get somewhere, and I'm just really concerned about clutter. We seem to want a sign for everything, and yet we have our handhelds, which can tell you everything. In fact, your handheld can tell you how long it takes to bike from wherever you happen to be. So I get the importance of featuring biking and walking over car driving. I am a little disconcerted that there's not any sense of accessibility on this. There's no one in a wheelchair. There's no sense that you either walk or you bike or you don't get to go there. I just think it's a nice idea, but it's not 1974. it's 2020, and all of this information is available right here. And really up here, because after you've been here twice, 3 times, you know where things are in West Hollywood. So I don't know if my colleagues, if you want to do it, then I'll follow the signs when I'm on my bike. I'll let you know if they're true. Because let me tell you, getting from the Norman Triangle to the Sunset Strip, I love that there's like this cute little pink steep. Like, no kidding. So I would just have that to say. The Transportation Commission certainly has our best interests at heart, but I'm just concerned that this is a good idea in search of some public funds that maybe just really makes clutter. Mayor Pro Tem?
Actually, I'm first.
Oh,
You got a speakers-
Councilmember Durant.
got a
I thought
speakers
that
list.
said my name. I was like,
Yeah,
I
you
just
got a
spoke.
speakers
What's
list.
happening?
I agree, Mayor. Sign everywhere, a sign blocking out the scenery, breaking my mind. Do this, don't do that. Can't you read the sign? That's what I've been thinking about the whole time we've been discussing this item. I think they're visually blight. I don't think they're necessary. Between Fairfax and La Brea, we are 3 blocks tall from Willoughby to Fountain. I mean, you don't need a sign to tell you which way to go. I don't think that the benefit that's being suggested is derived, and I think most people today, including myself, depend on Waze and other information on iPhones in order to figure out the quickest and best way to get somewhere. So I think they're well-intentioned. I think there's better ways to deal with our carbon footprint and reduce driving. I think the signs are not them, so I intend to vote no on the item.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. As was mentioned in the public comment, this is a recommendation that unfortunately isn't new. It just has never been done. And one of the things that we as a council in recent years have been saying and impressing upon our staff and the public is the need for more infrastructure to make biking safer for people to get out of their cars, to know where they can go, and to make biking a realistic option for folks. If you live in West Hollywood, you might know where things are. You might be familiar with the area. But if you're not familiar with West Hollywood, if you're some of that traffic that drives through West Hollywood on a daily basis, and you suddenly see these signs pointing you in directions, if you walk or bike, it might encourage you to get out. It also encourages people who are driving to be aware that there are people who are not driving, who are still trying to get around the city and be safe. So I think it's exactly what the council has been asking for. It's clearly what the community is asking for and has been asking for some time. And I think I'm particularly heartened that this is something that came from community discussion, from the Bicycle Task Force, but also from the community at large. We are interconnected, and we are not going to solve our transportation problems within our 1.9 square miles. I understand that this was something that was invented at a neighborhood council level, a very hyper-local level in a neighboring area, and it's something that they came to us and worked through our process to bring it to this level. Most people wouldn't do that. They just would have put up the signs, and then the city could have taken them down, and then, it was over. But I think the fact that they're trying to work with us to get something moving on a timeline that's realistic and needed, I think is very important. So while, yes, you can look at things on your phone, but if you're looking at your phone when you're crossing the street, that's a problem. If you're using your phone while you're biking, that's even more of a problem. So I think there are signs that direct traffic for reasons. I would like to see more bicycle traffic than car traffic, and hopefully these signs will encourage that and help folks who are choosing those modes better navigate our city and the surrounding region. And I'm supportive of this item with the updated signs that include the recommendations from the Transportation Commission, and I would like to see it move at a quicker pace and be expanded through the city as was presented to the Transportation Commission. Thank you.
Councilmember Heilman.
Hi, thank you everyone who came out to speak. As I read staff's recommendation, they're not recommending that we implement a citywide signage or wayfinding. They're recommending that we look at signage as part of the Willoughby Vista Gardner Greenway project, and I think that's a very prudent recommendation. I share some of the concerns of the mayor and my colleagues. Signage should be coordinated with our existing signage in the city, and it should be based on specifications that the city develops based on the state codes and based on our color schemes and our design aesthetic, and it should go out to bid with an open bidding process. That's what's really transparent. I agree with Lindsay that infrastructure for biking is important, but the infrastructure I think people are talking about are not wayfinding signs. They're talking about making sure that there are dedicated bike lanes that are secure, that there are streets that are set aside for biking, that we have those kind of protections in place for cyclists. So while I appreciate the efforts of the people who brought this forward, I agree with staff's assessment that we should try signage on a very limited basis in the upcoming project, evaluate how that signage works, if at all, and then go through another process to do a citywide sign program if we feel that's appropriate.
Councilmember Meister.
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Heilman. I was very concerned about the process and confused by the staff report at first until I spoke with staff, because it seemed like this wasn't going by our typical process, and there wasn't an RFP process for the signage. And my understanding is we are going to be, putting in new signs and wayfinding signs, so there should be consistency with what we're already doing in other parts of the city. I'm open to having something like this as a pilot, just for that one street for now, and then seeing how effective it is, and then if we do find that it's effective, then it needs to go out to bid. It needs to be consistent with the other signage that we have in our city, so that we don't just have a hodgepodge of different designs going on. We want to have, our branding, and I also, I think I mentioned it to staff, I kind of was, I kind of felt funny about the signage leading to other cities' venues when we want to direct people to our venues in the city. So that was something that I felt I wasn't comfortable with. I'd rather see, let's see a sign going to Plummer Park, not Poinsettia Park.
So I'd like to make a motion that we direct staff to develop and pilot the design of the wayfinding signage as part of the Willoughby and Vista Gardner Greenway project. I would like these signs to include people with disabilities, graphic representation, and maybe even there could be like a drag queen representation, how long it takes to walk in heels, if you're not familiar with heels, that sort of thing. But I do, in all seriousness, I think I think if we're going to do this, we need to do it in the West Hollywood way, which is to make sure that everyone is included and that we're dealing with what goes on in our city, and we're not asking people to go to other cities, and that we are paying attention to our own identity, our own brand, that Lisa and others are involved, and that we do this on a limited scale. So I've made a motion. I don't know if there's a second. It's been moved and seconded by Councilmember Meister. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing one opposed, we shall move on to item 5. I made notes and now I forget. E. 5E. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. That's really terrific. We appreciate your efforts. 5E, Economic Development Study.
Right. This is my item. Directing staff to perform an economic development study. The purpose of the study will be to provide a detailed evaluation of the City of West Hollywood's current economic conditions and analysis of potential issues and opportunities for growth. The information gathered in the study will help the city maintain and enhance its economic successes while striving to continue to meet the residents' needs for both local serving businesses and a diversity of employment opportunities. The study will include economic and demographic profiles, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis, also known as SWOT, and market demand analysis with supply, vacancy, and lease rates, retail sales performance, and retail sales surplus and leakage. And if you want me to continue.
I do not need you to continue, but you may.
No, that's okay.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions for Councilmember Meister? All right, Mr. Stevens, and then Mr. Martin, and then we have some citizen position slips. And by Mr. Martin, I mean former Councilmember and Mayor Martin.
The Honorable Steve. Council members, Jake Stevens, resident of the City of Los Angeles. I'm here as the Community Engagement Director of Faring, your only homegrown in West Hollywood real estate developer. Lauren, don't fall out of your chair. I'm here to support your item enthusiastically. I think it's great. We think it will be very useful and an important tool, and just want to recommend or request one small tweak in the list of categories to be studied. The current proposed study will provide an analysis of economic conditions on a citywide scale, which is great. It says it's inclusive of retail, hospitality, entertainment, and other markets. We would ask that you specifically call out office in that list of categories. We think that's very important and something that will have great bearing on the study's applicability in the future. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Martin.
Martin, West Hollywood. Yes, this is, I appreciate this coming forward. I think it's particularly important because you're talking about the 2050 visioning, because very often, sometimes these things take place in a vacuum. I was been concerned about the hotel study that you guys commissioned that it seems to have been round filed. I mean, clearly I'm hearing that there's a surplus in hotels, and a lot of our existing hoteliers are very concerned about this constant rubber stamping of additional hotel rooms that doesn't seem to be sustainable, particularly in view of what may be happening in the future with global warming. There may be a complete turndown in travel that may seriously impact this community. We don't have a healthy balance of office space. We may also want to look at how we do mixed use, because we want to encourage the mixed use housing. We know we have a glut of retail space. We know that retail space is very expensive. We also know that retail space is not at the kind of demand that it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So maybe we allow people who are building mixed use to use some of the first floor for housing or housing amenities like community rooms and things like that, so that there's something of a balance, because we are generating most of our housing through mixed-use development. I think there is a need for more office space. I think that maybe we should look at what we're doing with signage on Sunset, determining whether or not we're getting bang for the buck. And then lastly, I think we really need to look at how we do development agreements. I think that we've seen with both the project on Sunset, the Arts Club, I don't think we got bang for our buck on that. I think when you look at the Townscape project, where it looked like a good deal, but now we're selling a pair of $65 million condos. We're not getting the kind of deals with our development agreements. We're not bringing in the kind of expertise. We're not asking the hard questions, and it's really, we're being to some degree taken advantage of. So anyway, I think this is timely, and thank you for letting me run over.
Thank you. Citizen position slip.
Yes, Victor Omolchenko did not wish to speak, but wanted to express his support for the recommended item.
Thank you, Mr. Olchenko. Any comments? Councilmember Heilman.
Yes, thank you for bringing this forward. I have concerns about it because $25,000 is really not a lot of money, depending on what kind of study that we're going to conduct. And I'm a little bit concerned that this needs to be more targeted and more refined in terms of what it is we're actually asking for. It's almost like we're throwing in everything in the kitchen sink, and trying to get it done for $25,000 is going to be difficult. I think the purpose here is to really look at gaps in our existing retail and commercial sector. And if that's the focus, I'm hoping that when staff looks at this, they will refine the scope of the study so that it is manageable within that $25,000. And, if we're looking at what are the gaps in the retail area, commercial sector, I'm okay with that. I think that's a reasonable thing for us to do, but it's almost like this is trying to do everything at once, and I don't think it's going to really work.
Yep, my main focus is about the gaps, and I'm open to this being about commercial space, not only retail, but also office space. If the council is willing to put more money towards it, that would be a good thing. I mean, that number was given to me by staff. So if staff thinks that it's not enough, then they should speak up now or forever hold their peace.
I don't know what staff gave you the number. Someone else is going to speak. I'll respond to that in a bit.
Councilmember Duran, giving away my time.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few comments. As it's currently written, I don't support the item. I actually think you probably need to add another zero. If you were to truly do an economic development study, it's probably a $250,000 study rather than $25,000. And it really brings forth the question, what is the purpose of the study? I think some communities that are experiencing economic downturn or urban blight and are highly dependent upon certain tax dollars in order to meet their basic social service needs would have a different economic development study than a city like ours. Our city, if anything, is in hyperdrive economically. What we're seeing is expanding commercial rents going up, not blighted or down. We see that the Amazon has become a serious threat to not only retail in West Hollywood, but all across the state of California. And what I know to be true about office development, while there may be a shortage, it really doesn't provide us with any additional tax revenue. Offices often provide services which are not a taxable function. It's not products, it's not goods. If there is sales tax, if any, we have to share that sales tax with Sacramento and the County of Los Angeles. I think that our highest driving economic force continue to be hotels, and that's why we supported the development of hotels as our main form of economic engine in the city of West Hollywood. So I think that without more direction about what it is that we're trying to accomplish, for example, one of the things that I could support was a study about how to provide for those nonprofit organizations which can't compete on the market with market forces, but are necessary for the delivery of basic services to our residents. How do we accommodate that would be, I think, a more interesting study than just general economic development. I know I share this every month with my colleagues, and they're probably tired of hearing me say it, but I still firmly believe that the economy is generated by the private sector, that government's role is to restrain or restrict that private enterprise, and we don't create economic energy as government. The private sector does. And so the private sector is alive and well in the city of West Hollywood. In fact, it's booming, and we can see that by the commercial rents on all of our commercial corridors. So I don't think that our businesses require any government foot up or leg up in order to compete. So I think if we were to identify maybe with specificity what are the areas that we think need to be addressed rather than just a general economic development study, that might be more interesting to me. But I think that this is probably evaluated. I think it would probably be a lot more expensive for a general economic study. And I don't think it's targeted enough to be of any value. I think because we all sit up here on council, we're aware, I think for the most part, of the current challenges we're having in terms of the escalating cost of both living and working here. Whether we have a role to play in that and to what degree, that's a separate question. So for all those reasons, I can't support the item as it is tonight.
And just to respond, one of the reasons that I brought forward this study was to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our residents, and that includes employment opportunities, and these are the types of the things that I was hoping that we would look at. I'll wait for Mayor D'Amico.
So, actually, Paul, I think you were maybe going to jump in, but I was please do, but answer this question when you do. So I'm uneasy in a couple of ways. One is that we're sort of taking our council funds and we're spending it on a sort of staff level item. That's probably negotiable, but I also am with Councilmember Duran that probably if we want to do this, we should identify, $200,000 and we should do it. And I guess the real question I want to ask is, so we have had a disruption in our economic development department. We have maybe some funds available from that staff person who's no longer, getting paid those funds. So I don't know if it's possible to redirect those dollars, but I guess I'm looking to you, the city manager, to identify how an economic development study would help and who might be using it. And I would definitely jump in with my yes vote if the answer to those questions exist. But I think just doing a study and reading a report, I'm less interested in.
We're at a real interesting time in terms of the city and the economy, not only in the city, but just retail trends in the nation. I think for us to take a step back and look at what the future of retail is going to look like would be a helpful exercise, and I think it would not only for economic development, but all of our land use documents. West Hollywood is uniquely situated that from a retail development perspective, we can continue to reinforce the walkable city. There are standards on how far residents are willing to walk to restaurants, grocery stores, and dry cleaners. And if we wanted to look at creating a document that one looks at the economic health of the city, the demographic profiles, that would be a major endeavor. I think it could be a worthwhile endeavor if it's done correctly. My recommendation at this point, because you are going to be looking at something that's going to be $250,000 to $300,000. If you look at the hotel study on its own that we do, that's pretty narrow focused. We don't have a lot of hotels. And that's $100,000. And we know where those are, and we know where that future is. This is a lot of visioning, a lot of crystal balling what's happening in the city, especially with a lot of the smart city technology that's coming online and how that can reshape our economy. My request would be to leverage this conversation and work on the work program and come back with a solid recommendation as part of the next budget, which sounds like it's a long time away. It really isn't, and a project of this magnitude easily will take 12 months to 18 months to complete.
So Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'll be brief. Because we don't currently have a permanent economic development director, because this is something that will require substantially more budget and will also require being incorporated into a work plan, I would recommend that this idea be brought to the budget subcommittee, so that way discussion of what the priorities of it are can be brought into the budget discussion, so that way it's actually worked into a plan. So because it's not just a money question, it's also like, do we have the people to have the time to manage this process too? And while the study itself may be contracted, we still need staff to oversee it and make sure it's being, inclusive of all the things that we know in our city we have to be inclusive of. So I think it's a right idea in terms of problem solving, but I think there are gaps in order to get it done in this particular moment. It just, I think, might be a little premature. That's where I'm at.
Councilmember Heilman.
I'll be brief also. If we're going in that route where we're forwarding it to the budget subcommittee, I would really like this to look at what are the gaps in terms of our neighborhood serving businesses. Where do we have them and what businesses are we missing? Where are the gaps in office space and in particular community serving office space like accountants who provide tax services and the like? Do we have sufficient resources in the city? And then are there gaps in the retail, particularly looking at vacancies? And one thing I would throw out there is auto serving businesses. We're requiring a lot of them to leave the city, and even gas stations are more likely over time going to transition. So we'd all love to have a vehicle-free or a car-free zone, but people are still going to have cars and they're going to need to get gas somewhere. Our rules may be driving all of those businesses out of the community, and we may want to do that, but we need to be thoughtful about it.
So it seems like you've spurred on exactly the right conversation. Do we need to vote on this, or do you have direction and you'll come back with an item?
I'm comfortable bringing back an item with as part of the work program for economic development.
All right. Thank you very much. I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. And additional public comment.
You have additional public comments, my apologies.
Yes.
Two of them.
Mr. Batarsky and Mr. Eastman, in that order. Good evening, sir. Thank you for waiting all night.
Good late evening, Mayor and councilors. My name is George Boyarsky. I live in WeHo. My wife and I came here about over 6 years ago, and I'd like to comment about how we find our neighborhood and how we find the city. We live on the east side, Genesee Avenue, below Santa Monica. We've got big trees in front of the house. We've got birds all the way up to ravens. But more to the point, it's an area that has a very diverse population. Genesee Avenue has people walking 16 hours a day. There are a lot of delis, really good bakeries. 2 blocks over and down an alley, and you've got a world-class art gallery. And then there's Plummer Park, green, but it's also a community center. And that's where I first found out just how thirsty one almond can be. And as for the city, I think West Hollywood is a rich city. I think it's able to provide a lot of services for the citizens, and I think it does. Those little buses to pick up people for medical appointments, the city line playing classical music, the swimming pool playing Janis Joplin, and it's a clean city also, even the day after Halloween. So, you know, there's just a lot that is good here, and that includes the library. Small, but I can't think of any other library that would sponsor a drag queen story hour.
Pretty fun, right? It's pretty fun, that drag queen story hour.
And there's a government that really tries for transparency and also provides a very strong website to back that up.
So your 2 minutes are up, but I don't think you just came here to thank us for making a nice city. Was there something you wanted us to fix?
To pick?
No, to fix. Is there some reason we
yes.
can help you?
Oh, absolutely. I'll be back.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. You just came to say nice things. Thank you very much. Mr. Eastman, that was a very good lesson to learn.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, the distinguished City Council of West Hollywood. 25 years ago, Dennis Perron and I asked John Heilman to open a Cannabis Buyers Club in West Hollywood, and we did. It was in 1995. And 5 years later, in 2000, I asked you to give me a permit for the Millennium Medical Marijuana March on the West Coast, because the government in Washington, D.C. gave me my first permit for the Millennium Medical Marijuana March on April 29, 2000, which was attended by my dearly departed friend Terrence Hallinan, the District Attorney of San Francisco, who died a few days ago, who happened to be born in the same hospital that I was born in. I forgot to say I live in Hollywood, and my name's Richard Eastman. I'm here tonight because some of you know that the city of Los Angeles honored me for living with AIDS for 25 years. And I'm coming to ask you for a favor again, because 25 years ago I asked John Howman and the city to let Dennis Perone and I get everybody high in America before they die. You did. The Lowell Cafe threw me out. I ended up in the newspaper. They're not the Lowell Cafe. I'm not here to discuss why they did that or who you're letting operate the place. But ultimately, the media has been picking up on Richard Eastman again. This is Nuggle Magazine, and it says, Richard Eastman running for President of the United States. I'm proposing a smoke-in on the West Coast, like we've been doing in Washington, D.C. for the past 50 years, which I've been on the permit with the federal government for the last 13 years. Now, on April 20th, which is a Monday, 90 days from now, I'm asking you to let me use the auditorium one more time for a presidential debate on the benefits of medical marijuana in America, a roving permit like the Sheriff's Department gave me 20 years ago for a march, which will be determined when you give me the permit. And it's going to be a free event. Nobody turned away for lack of funds. I will have sponsors. And it's not about me. It's about the future of medical marijuana in America and the city of West Hollywood upholding that law that Dennis Perone and I worked, which benefited you now with all these millions of dollars from your tax that you're charging and these places that are either good or bad. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes tonight's meeting. We will meet again. We will meet again on
February 3rd.
February 3rd at 6:30 p.m. in this auditorium. Thank you very much.